Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting of the Haltom City Council, January 26, 2004, is called to order. Councilmember John Williams will give our invocation and pledge at this time, and I'll ask you to stand for both of those, please.
Bow our heads, please. Father, Lord, we thank you for this day that you've given us, Lord. We thank the opportunity that we live in the country, Lord, that we can gather together like this and discuss the business of the city. We pray, Lord, that you'll open our minds and open our hearts. Pray, Lord, that we'll do what's best for the city and not just best for what we think it is. Pray for those that are sick tonight. Pray for Tracy's baby. Is very ill tonight. Pray that you reach down and touch your hand on him. Pray for us as we go on our way home. Pray that we'll have safety going there, Lord. And help us have a accord in this meeting. And we ask these things in thy name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are going to proceed with the meeting, even though our city manager is not in position at the moment. He'll be along shortly. We'll move forward at this time with our presentations, the first of which our Director of the Senior Center, Ms. Bobby Arthur. There you are.
Hi. Okay, I'm here tonight to publicly acknowledge a lot of the businesses and individuals in our city who, without their support, we would not have the Seniors Christmas Dinner. Contributions came from AA Record, Donnie and Pam Denman, Allison Roach, Bobby and Bill Cates, B&S Billiards, the Strip Matter family, City of Haltom City, Cody Elliott, Delbert Arthur, George Fowler, Gene Snow Enterprises, Haltom City Moose Lodge, IESI, Mickey and Ellen Flood, John and Vicki Williams, Meridian Homes, Montclair Homes, North Texas Concrete Pumping, North Texas Flooring, North Texas Land Development, Northwest Bank, 183 Pond, Ronnie Long, Sue Lawler, Tom and Kathy Muir, Trey Fowler, and the White Settlement International Order of Odd Fellows. We had items donated for door prizes and bingo from A Daisy a Day Florist, Fran Nelly, Haltom City Senior Center, Haltom City Municipal Services, Lily's Beauty Salon, Paul's Florist, Peggy Sue's Beauty Salon, and Rita's World. Lots of volunteers who made the whole day possible: Alice Long, Alice Platt, American Legion Post 655, Amy Arthur, Barbara Lisinski, Betty Peterson, Bill Proper, Bob Watkins, Boy Scout Troop 321, Calvin and Frida White, Chuck and Annette Langford, Delbert Arthur, Diane Bransom, Donna Butler, Ed McGinley, Eddie Eads, Fran Burns, Fort Worth Christian Center, Gary Bedford, George Fowler, Haltom City Fire Department, Haltom City Park and Rec Department, Haltom City Police Department, Henry and Joe Wright, James and Ruby Russell, Jane Fowler, Jason Williams from our fire department, Gene Wills, Jim Sutton, Jody Allen, John Williams, Jay and Clara Childress, Linda Delamar, Lupe Pachera, Marion Perkins, Mark Hopp and family, Mary Ruth and Clyde Ormsby, Natalie Pachera, Pat Davenport, Pat Griffiths, Randall Miller, Roy George, Russell Ragsdale from our police department, Sharon Wood, Stephen Gay Van Zant, Tiffany Price, Tim Pullen from our fire department, Tracy and Mimsy Henderson, and Virginia Poole. Total numbers for 2003, we home delivered 101 meals in Haltom City, and we served at the church 225 meals. All the numbers were up, so we thank you all very, very much.
Ms. Arthur, we appreciate the report. I had an opportunity to be there that day and be a part of the function, and I thought it was one of the best we've ever had. Thanks to you and your staff, and to all the volunteers that helped make that possible. So thank you for your report. Members of the council, any questions, comments from Ms. Arthur? Councilmember Williams?
I just want to thank Bobby for her undying effort to keep this thing going. She starts up sometime first part of November and starts calling all these people and reminding them about it and the love that she has for the center and for these people. And I want to say a special thanks from the council for all you do for us. We really appreciate you down there and all the people that are associated with you. So if you'll pass that along there.
Councilmember Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to thank Miss Arthur, but I'd like to thank her husband, Delbert Arthur, for him giving Bobby to us and all the time that she spends. She and their kids also, as Councilmember Williams mentioned, they do. Miss Arthur, as we know, goes way above and beyond what's called for in her job, and I want to thank her for that. And I know all the seniors think very highly of her, and we're very fortunate to have someone as good as her. I'd also like to thank the Langfords and the Van Zants. I know Reverend Van Zants uses his facility to outreach to our community, and he does a great job, throughout the year. But he opens up his facility at this time of the year for the city to do this now, and I know the Langfords spend their time and give of their time to. They're part of the ministry there, and I want to take time to just thank them for all that they do in opening their facilities for us. I'm sorry, Councilmember Williams, thank you for mentioning. Reverend Van Zandt is also our fire chaplain here in the city, so not only does he open his facility or his church to the community and outreach to it, but he also donates his time to our community fire department as our fire chaplain. So I want to thank him and his family very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Fowler. Mr. Anthony Bond, if you're following the agenda, you notice he had a presentation. He has had a death in the family, not going to be able to be here. Perhaps we'll have an opportunity to hear him at the next council meeting. The third item has been pulled. That's Ms. Staub has requested that item be pulled, and some of that will be addressed a little bit later in the council meeting. In addition to Ms. Arthur here tonight to make a presentation, the Chairman and CEO of the Northeast Tarrant County Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Bob Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Geez, Bobby, is there like 3 people in the entire city didn't show up for this thing to volunteer?
Yeah.
Wow. We have a great relationship with the senior citizen center in Haltom City, and she is a testament to the volunteerism that we have in the North Texas area, and we're glad to work with her all the time. I'm really here tonight to extend an invitation on behalf of the Quad Cities DFW Foundation to each and every one of you. You'll be receiving an invitation in the mail, but I wanted to come and make it personal because it's been a year that we stood before you and talked about the economic development in our region, and especially in our Quad Cities with our partners of the other cities, Richland Hills, North Richland Hills, Watauga, these 2 phenomenal school districts that we share, Keller and Birdville ISD, the 750 members of the Chamber of Commerce and all the private schools. It's been a great year for the Quad Cities effort, and without your support it wouldn't have happened. And so I'm here tonight to extend an invitation to you to a luncheon that'll be in your honor, the shareholders meeting, the first annual. It'll be on the 25th of February, Wednesday the 25th, 11:30 over at the BISD Arts Athletic Complex. We hope you'll take time to be with us, have lunch, and recognize all the great accomplishments that the foundation has helped attribute this past year. We can recognize in our Quad Cities area 368 new businesses, 378 new homes being built in our area, 1.5 billion in retail sales, and over $1.5 million in new housing starts, so it's a great record. Again, it doesn't happen without a lot of effort from your staff and your support, and so we hope that you'll take time to join us for an hour and a half and let us recognize you and thank you for your continuing support of the Quad Cities DFW effort. Where it goes from here will be the stars will hold it true. We're looking toward some big things in the future for Quad Cities. We just have taken baby steps this first year, and now it's time to really launch and bring some more economic development to our region. So on behalf of the Quad Cities partners, I extend an invitation to each of you to please come and be our guest. Thank you, Mayor, for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. We move now to the announcement section of our meeting. We have some announcements to make. Mr. Muir, I believe you have a couple of announcements to begin with.
Thank you, Mayor. To really the first one is going to be to the viewers at home. We had a computer crash about 45 minutes ago, so there will not be any graphics to the viewers at home. You will be able to see the video that you're seeing on TV, but as far as any graphics, the maps or anything that we had planned, they will not be on your screen. We apologize for that, but it was just we do what we can. The second announcement I've got is normally something that your public information coordinator would present to you, Fran Burns. She is playing grandma today and tonight. She became a first-time grandma. But she wanted me to remind the citizens of the Images of Haltom City photo contest. I think the entries are due at the end of the week. So I want to encourage those people that are interested in that. It's been a very popular contest, I think 14, 15 years, something like that. So just keep that in mind. Can I go to the next one? Sure. My next announcement is with Ms. Norris, with our partners over there at Haltom High. She's got an exciting announcement coming up, and I'll let her explain that to the council and to the citizens.
Hi, I'm Renee Norris. I'm a teacher at Haltom High School, and we are doing the production of West Side Stories starting this weekend. And I just wanted to invite the Haltom City community to come out and see us. There are a bunch of great kids in it, and it starts this Saturday at 7:30, and it's Monday and Tuesday at 7:30 as well. And we have a Sunday matinee at 3 o'clock. It's at Haltom High School in the theater. And tickets are $10 for adults and $7 for students at the door. And reservations can be made. Since you don't have graphics, I'll give you the number. It's 817-547-6053. And these are great kids, and it's going to be a wonderful production. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, and we do look forward to that. I didn't get to attend last year, but the drama department there always does a great job with these musicals, and I know the West Side Story this year will be no different. You have some guests with you, I think. Do you want to? Do you not?
No, I do
Okay.
not. Okay.
Okay, I thought maybe you had some guests with you.
They are all in rehearsal tonight.
They're rehearsing.
They're getting into their
ready
costumes right now.
for Saturday. Well, thank you, Ms. Norris. We look forward to the production. We move now to the consent agenda that involves items number 1 through 7. What the consent agenda is, it's items that are deemed to be routine, that require little or no further discussion. Approval of the consent agenda authorizes the city manager to implement each item in accordance with staff or board recommendations. We will pull item number 4 and item number 6 off, so the action we're about to take will be items 1 through 7, with the exception of item 4 through 6, which will be reserved for individual discussion and action. Councilmember Hurley, you had your light on.
That was just to remind you about pulling two
Okay.
items.
I'm ready to receive a motion regarding items 1 through 7 with the removal of 4 and 6. Councilmember Sutton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we accept items 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7 and approve them on the consent agenda.
Councilmember Hurley.
That's for second.
Have a motion, a second for approval. Any discussion? There being none, if you'll register your vote, I'll display it at this time. And that passes by unanimous vote with Councilmember Henderson not here tonight. And you may have picked up when Councilmember Williams was giving the invocation, Councilmember Henderson is not here tonight because of the baby in the family being quite ill, and they think we're taking her to the doctor. So we do hope everything goes well in that regard. We move now to item number 4. Mr. Muir, do you want to introduce this item, and let's talk about the library project?
Thank you, Mayor. The voters in 2001 voted in favor of a $4 million bond issue for a new library, approximately 28,000 to 30,000 square feet. The bonds are scheduled to be issued this summer. And as far as the land purchase, the city's currently negotiating that purchase right now. But we wanted to stay on schedule for the library, what the voters understood to be. So we wanted to start the architecture process now. The process is going to be a 4-step process. The first step is going to include conceptual design by the architect. The second step will include a detailed technical design, which will not start until after the land is secured. Third step will include bidding of the construction, and the fourth step is the actual construction phase. The staff and actually there was an architecture selection committee that composed of myself, the city engineer, the library director, and a library board member and a private citizen that reviewed responses to an RFQ that we sent out. After reviewing those, we heard presentations from 5 firms, and they were all very qualified firms. It was exciting to see the response that we got to the project that the city is undertaking. I'm pleased to present for your consideration and approval a contract with F&S Partners of Dallas. These guys are an exceptional firm. Their commitment to excellence and distinction, their commitment to constructing an environmentally friendly building, in their commitment to the budget. I think you're going to be excited with the product that they're going to provide. And that's what I've got for your consideration, is the authorization to execute that contract. And I'll take any questions if there are
Okay, any questions from members of the council for Mr. Muir regarding the information he's just given? Councilmember Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Muir. I don't know if this is for you or for the mayor. What year were the bonds passed and approved by the voters for the library?
In 2001.
2001. Okay, and that was a $4 million bond package.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for Mr. Muir? Okay, members of the council, what is your pleasure regarding item number 4, the request for approval of this resolution to award the contract? Councilmember Hurley?
I move that we approve resolution R 2004-006-08.
We have a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Councilmember Fowler?
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion before I call for the vote? There being none, if you'll register your vote, and when I display it, that shows unanimous vote. Item number 6, we move to now. Mr. Muir?
Thank you, Mayor. Back on October 13th of last year, the council voted to enact a freeze on 2 currently vacant positions. One is the senior accountant, and the other one was the city engineer position. With the city engineer position, with that one, there was a 90-day freeze pending a staff report on the availability or the need for, I guess, the engineering needs of the city. The staff has not really done a quantitative report on that because of other issues that have diverted our attention. But I did want to present for your consideration unfreezing these positions. I'm not anticipating filling these positions right now. The one I'm looking at probably having to do fairly quickly would be the senior accountant. If I can't make some progress in filling a director of finance position here very quickly, I'm going to have to go to a plan B. Without a finance director and a senior accountant, we are woefully deficient in proactively handling some things that I feel we need to do. So I'm just presenting this for your consideration to unfreeze these 2 positions.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Muir? Councilmember Fowler, Williams, and Branson. In that order, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, as far as the city engineers, how many people do we currently have occupying? I know we talked about some other things during the budget that didn't happen. We currently have the assistant city engineer, and then who else? I don't, what is Mr. Payton's title?
He is a engineering associate.
Engineering associate. And then what else in that department?
Inspectors.
Okay.
And that is it for the street programs that we've got. We're going to be issuing more debt in the future for street programs, and which would include infrastructure. We just can't. We're just in a very reactive mode right now in dealing with engineering. As far as a city our size and with the activities that we've got going on, I feel we need to be more in a planning mode, be more in a proactive mode. I don't think that. I think the city engineer and the assistant city engineer are essential with the various different projects that we've got going. But again, I'm not proposing to fill these things anytime in the immediate future. I'm just looking to more or less unfreeze the positions. I'm really needing the senior accountant unfrozen instead of just having one frozen. I'm just looking to unfreeze it, and you'll have you've got my statement that I'm not planning to fill that position anytime in the near future.
Well, I guess to preface this, and no discredit to you, I just I can understand the necessity of filling a senior accountant position just due to the fact of not knowing that our finance director was fairly unforeseen that he was going to depart and took an opportunity to move. I don't have a problem with filling that, but I know that years ago when I was on the council, the engineering department that was when it was created. Mr. Van Nieuwenhuis was the gentleman that we hired while I was on the council, and our intent was for them to do what they could in-house and be able to understand and decipher the plans and watch over the projects that came in, and then us design what projects we could in-house. And I think at that time we were paying rating associates in the neighborhood of $600,000 a year just for design. And of course, as you've seen over the last 10 years or so, we've been able to do, and fortunate enough to do, a lot more projects just because if you cut that in half, let's just say, and we're only spending $200,000 to $300,000 outside engineering, we're able to put that money back into our street programs, and that was the intent of the council at that time. I never envisioned it to grow to a department of 4 to 6 employees, and not saying that we don't need it. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't do what I could to try to save our taxpayers where I feel like we can, and areas that we need to cut back. We're still in pretty difficult financial times as far as tax revenue and other things. We weren't able to do a true raise for our employees this year, and I hate that. I wish that we could have done something different. We did the best we could, which was better than nothing, and I just feel like right now I can understand your need for the senior accountant position to be unfrozen, especially with the fact of not having a finance director in place currently. So I can see the necessity to fill one or both of those, and I don't have a problem moving towards that. I personally, from a business standpoint, would like to see us hold off on unfreezing the city engineer position, because I just feel like I know we have projects that are upcoming, but I don't feel like that what we have, I feel very capable in Mr. Howell's ability to take care of the needs of the city from an engineering standpoint, along with Mr. Payton, and the other individuals in the department. So I would like to see us maybe hold off on the city engineer, unfreezing it, but I personally can understand the necessity of the senior accountant. So, okay. And that's no discredit to you, Tom. It's just I feel like that I need to, as a council person, do everything I can to try to save for all the citizens. I just feel like that's an area we can hold off for a little longer and maybe wait till the next budget year and then start looking towards the end of this fiscal year maybe and prepare the next budget year if you come back to the council. And then let's say it's just my one vote in my opinion, but I would like to see us hold off until that time.
I can appreciate that, and like I said before, I would not be filling it up. I'd be holding out for as long as I can, but I submit that with the KB development coming up and some of the other things in the immediate future, it's going to be some difficulty, and I just don't want to be encumbered by having to come back to the council to unfreeze one sole position I didn't think it was necessary at the time that the positions were froze, but I understand the need for that, but you know, if that's the will of the council, that's fine. We'll work with that. But I wanted to at least try to unfreeze these things so that we can move on. But I can appreciate that.
No. Okay. Councilmember Williams, and then Councilmember Bransom, and Councilmember Hurley.
The senior, or the finance director, we're not getting any action on that,
I'm getting some.
but qualified, in your opinion, what you want to lead the city?
I think with the tenuous situation of the city manager position right now, getting a qualified finance director at this time, they're not going to be knowing who they're going to be working for. They don't know. It could change anytime, or if, you know, if a new city manager comes in, they may want their own guy. So I think it's prohibiting some from applying. But something's going to have to give pretty quick here, because we're about to start a budget process in the next. I'm going to be starting it in the next 30, 45 days. The department heads will be starting it probably April Fool's Day. There's a reason for that.
Was that your graphic for the
Yes.
evening?
There's a reason for that.
Well, you're hard to follow. I remember when we were working the budget, it was a very long process, and Lord knows Mr. Fowler knows how to save money, and he can cut corners for us. But looking at this, we've already saved 4 months on both these positions, and I don't think the city has suffered much from those 4 months. We've been very fortunate in that. I agree that one of the positions does need to be filled immediately. I'm still open-minded on the other one. I would be in favor of this if you think this is exactly what the city needs, but I would want to have some pretty heavy feelings from you as far as, and you've dealt quite a few of those out, even up with the April Fool deal. But
All right.
do you foresee any other additions in staff in the next 60 to 90 days that you would look at outside of these? Any positions that you
Outside
would
of
need
these two positions?
Right.
No, I do not. And I'm not even really looking to fill the city engineer position in the next 60 to 90 days. It's really going to be kind of playing it by ear, but the senior accountant, yes. I envision having that filled within that time.
What do you think a city engineer would cost us? What do you think we could hire one for? I know what the grade is from where it starts to where it ends, but we have a tendency in the past that we've started at the top, and it's hard to start at the top and go down.
No, I
Yeah,
understand.
they don't like to go that way.
I understand. Probably in the 70, 60 to 80.
I was going to
somewhere
say
around there.
60, 65. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bransom.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, you touched a little bit about the KB homes. Do you have
Yes.
any idea when that development's a ballpark, like fall?
Well,
I know they've already left.
Those guys just cut out of here.
Yeah, they left right after-
James, can you
after we passed the
enlighten us
merger.
on that?
I guess where I'm going with the question,
Sure.
is do we have the staff right now, once they start the development and everything, without an engineer to even get that going well?
Yes, we do. We have 2 in-house engineers, Mr. Howell and again Mr. Payton. Mr. Payton is experienced in drainage, which will be the issue there. And then, of course, Mr. Howell is expertise is in infrastructure, so there'll be no problem with the staff that you have at hand. KB Homes needs to final plat. That process will take probably 30 to 40 days at the most. They're probably expecting to break ground probably fall or spring of the following year. It's going to take considerable time they've done most of their engineering. Of course, they have to submit that for the final plat process. But again, the preparation for this type of major undertaking. But we do have the staff in hand for that, no problem.
Do we have a professional engineer on staff right now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we
Yes,
do.
ma'am.
It's all right.
We have
I'll
2
call
licensed
Hold on.
engineers.
Okay, so Mr. House of PE.
Yes, he
Correct.
is.
Councilmember Hurley, and when he's finished, I'll be in line for a motion
I've got
regarding this item.
a statement I'd like to direct to the city manager. I would like to see the city take advantage of our staff for promotion within.
Mhm.
Had you planned to advertise for a #1 city engineer, or had you considered the possibility of promoting within and advertising for another associate? The learning curve is a whole lot less, and the education's already there.
Yes, sir. Yes, it is.
Do you feel comfortable with a question like that right now? I don't put you
Well,
on
you
the
kind of got a
spot.
gun pointed at my head here.
I don't put you on the spot, but
As red as his face is, no, Mr. Hurley.
Let me answer it this way. Typically, when I fill positions like this, and I can't use and the library is a little bit different because I did not pursue that, but usually I open it up to see what else there is that's out there, and I certainly give a lot of weight to inside candidates. I am a firm believer in promoting from within. I prefer it, but at the same time, I've got a duty to the staff and to the citizens here to get the best qualified candidate that I feel I can. But if I can do that in-house, I'll certainly do that.
well, that's one reason why we have a competent staff that a lot of them are working towards retirement right now. They've been here that long and they worked up. Thank you.
Councilmember Fowler, are you ready for a motion, or do you have further comment?
No, that was for a motion whenever you're ready, Mr.
I'm
Mayor.
ready for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the, to unfreeze the position of senior accountant at this time and remain a freeze on the city engineer position until, I guess, maybe bring it back as after Mr. Muir, maybe 60 days to 90 days. I'd say 90 days after Mr. Muir has an opportunity to start with the budget and see where we're at with our tax revenues.
Okay, we have a motion to unfreeze the senior accountant and leave the city engineer position frozen. Councilmember Branson, is that for a second?
No, it's not. I was going to ask if we could vote on the two items separately. One to unfreeze the accountant and one to unfreeze the engineer.
Oh,
The motion would have to be changed, I would imagine.
I would prefer that we go ahead and vote on this motion if we could.
Okay, well then I'll be voting no because I want them both unfrozen.
okay. So your motion stands?
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Averett?
I was just going to second Councilmember Fowler's motion, but
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Councilmember Williams?
Manager,
Okay.
if we freeze this other position for another 60 days, what would be the impact on the city? Will it be devastating, or?
No, because I wasn't planning to fill it within the next 60 to 90 days anyway.
So you could go ahead and go through the motions, and if it's unfrozen 60 days, go ahead and do it anyway.
That was going to be my plan anyway, to go ahead and do it just administratively.
Probably.
Further comments?
I don't have a
questions?
problem if he can go ahead and go through a process and put the lines out there and have one available.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, if you'll register your vote. Now, the motion is to unfreeze the senior accountant and to leave frozen the city engineer.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we move now to item number 8. This is a public hearing regarding the Community Development Block Grant Project. Mr. Muir, you want to introduce this item for us, please?
I'm going to introduce it to the extent that I'm going to introduce Mr. Bennett Howell, our interim city engineer. Just before I'll let him get started before I.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This agenda item is to conduct a public hearing and consider the submission of the reconstruction of the 5100 block and the 5200 block of Jerry Lane between Haltom Road and Rita Lane to the Tarrant County as the city's Community Development Block Grant application, and consideration and or action regarding approval of a resolution designated the 5100 block and the 5200 blocks of Jerry Lane between Haltom Road and Rita Lane to Tarrant County as the city's community development block grant project. As most of you know, each year we submit an application grant to the county, and they fund a certain percentage of our street reconstruction projects. The recent examples have been Catalpa, Joy Lee, which has just been completed, Gage Street, which is just now under construction, and this particular project will occur next year. The reason we have to submit now is the applications are due this week, and then Tarrant County has to go through their evaluation process. Typically, the funding is anywhere between $115,000 and $135,000 that we can use as we choose to put toward the complete project. Now, this street, we are proposing to reconstruct the street in concrete, redo the water and sewer, and drainage. The total cost without the grant is approximately $674,000 to reconstruct this and do the utilities. Right now, we were asking for $175,000 from the grant, but at this time, Tarrant County does not know how much funds they will have available because funding is actually from HUD, which is the federal program. But typically, it's anywhere from $115,000 to $135,000. And any difference of lack of funding, then the city will have to make up through general funds or water sewer funds or other funding applications. And so it is recommended that the council approve resolution R2004-004-16 designating the 5100 block and the 5200 blocks of Jerry Lane as this year's community development block grant application project.
Okay, before we take questions, and if you will remain in your position, Mr. Howell, Mr. Muir, do you have anything you need to add to that before the council begins to ask questions?
No, sir, not at this time. Just that street really needs help.
Typically, that street is right now it's the 8th worst street on our list, but if you factor in the utilities, then it goes up to the top of the list. So it's right up there as a bad street.
Okay, this is a public hearing, and I'm not going to open the public hearing right at the moment. We'll do that after the council has an opportunity to ask questions for clarification. Councilmember Fowler first, and then Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Quickly, you're saying the 51 and 5200 blocks of Jerry Lane as we discussed, but first question I'm going to get when somebody calls me tomorrow is when are y'all going to start? And understand that this is a grant that typically we get, and as you said, we do get a portion of it, and then the city will fund the balance of that project. But if you would, for the viewers and the citizens I know on Jerry Lane that are going to be excited to get some street repair, when would you anticipate starting?
Typically, the timeline, Tarrant County will finish evaluating all the grant applications by July or August of this year. Then they will make their recommendations to their commission board. And typically we find out usually in September, October, November, somewhere in that range. And then the design has to be done, and then the design has to go before Tarrant County's board for approval and that sort of thing. So typically we're looking at February, March of next year, somewhere in that range before ground will actually be broken. So about another year.
So about a year
Yeah.
from now, spring of next year, spring of 04.
05.
Or 05, I'm sorry.
Spring of 05.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying.
Point of clarification.
Yeah, I just wanted we should know as far as whether the grant's been received or not. We should know by the end of the fiscal year prior.
July or August of this year.
The Community Development Block Grant and HUD, they're usually pretty good about getting that stuff done prior to, so that cities can make those adjustments during their budget process. Now, granted, it's going to be late in the budget process, but it is going to be during that. So we should know something by no later than September, and barring that, the design should start probably in October. Is that fair?
No, the design won't start until December because it's got to go through Tarrant County's
Okay, that's right.
board.
That's right. But as far as the actual project, whether it got accepted or not and got approved and how much funding we're going to get, we should know that by the end of this fiscal year.
Yeah, this July or August.
Right.
Councilmember Williams, and then Councilmember Fowler has a follow-up question, I think.
Thank you. The engineer answered part of my question a while ago when they talking about the Worst First program that we have. I know it's hard to believe that that street was number 6, and the infrastructure underneath it made it worse. If you've gone down and made a ride on Haltom Road on Jerry Lane and went to Rita,
Right.
if you can make it, you need a tank or a 4-wheel drive. There's a Mrs. Davis out there tonight that's listening probably, and she's going to be very happy because I have very frequent talks with her about
Right.
it.
The Gilberts
And-
will also be happy. There's
and,
quite a few that call me.
There's a couple that passed away before it got fixed, and so I'm glad you're doing this. I hope we get it expedited, and it'll be a great addition to that area out there, and they'll carry that road on up through. And so I think it's an excellent idea, and I'd like to reserve a right for a motion when we get to that point.
Councilmember Fowler?
That was for a motion, but I'll defer to Mr. Williams.
Okay, this is a public hearing. We haven't opened the public hearing. We'll come back to the motion in just a moment. Since this is a public hearing, I'll open the public hearing at this time. Any member of the audience wishing to address this recommendation for the Community Development Block Grant Project for 2005, if you'd like to speak either for or against this, this is your opportunity. Anyone wishing to speak? Okay, there being none. Okay, Mr. Moore, do you wish to speak? Would you come to the podium, please? Give us your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
My name's Jim Moore, 4917 Medela. If we don't get the grant, does the project still go on and we just come up with the other 130 or 40,000, or does the project stop?
Typically, we've never not received the grant, but it would proceed.
It would still go ahead.
We just had to find the money in other places.
Okay.
I might just make a comment regarding the question Mr. Moore has. As a member of the Tarrant County Mayor's Council, they pull from that group the people who will review those applications, and I've had an opportunity to serve on that once before, and I will be a member of it this year when this item is under consideration. And to my knowledge, there's never been a time when there hasn't been money available, and we're certainly expecting some. The question is just how much. And a great effort is made by the people who serve on that panel to be fair, to look at the needs, and then apportion the money out based on that. So the expectation that there not be any funding from the Community Development Block Grant is very minimal. I think it's almost a given that there will be some money. It's just the question is how much.
Are there strings attached to these grants?
No.
Yes, Mr. Howell, would you repeat the question?
The question
for our
was, are
audience?
there strings attached to the grants? And typically, this money can only be used in low income to moderate income areas. Fortunately, according to HUD, most of Haltom City falls under that. So from that aspect, we don't have to worry about it. Other than that, there are no other strings.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak on this during the public hearing? There being none, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and we'll move now to the corresponding resolution. And Councilmember Williams?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move to approve resolution number 2004-004-16.
Councilmember Fowler.
It's for a second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second to approve this request, this proposal for the Community Development Block Grant Project for 2005. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, if you will, register your vote, and that passes by unanimous vote. Item number 9 on the agenda is another public hearing, and this regards a conditional use permit in a property zoned M2. And to give us all the details of that, our planning director, James Pliska.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, citizens of Haltom City. This is conditional use 001-04 to conduct a public hearing and consider the application of Mr. Amal Othman for the conditional use permit to operate an auto sales facility on property zoned M2, Heavy Industrial District, on lots 4, 5, and the west 35 feet of 3, Block 5 of the Earl's Addition, located on the northwest corner of Northeast 28th Street and Jean Lane, containing approximately 24,975 square feet of land, locally known as 4415 Northeast 28th Street. The accompanying ordinance is O 2004-001-15. Consideration and/or action regarding the approval of an ordinance, amending ordinance, the Haltom City zoning ordinance O 2002-03215 as amended, the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the City of Haltom City for a conditional use permit to allow for the operation of an auto sales facility in the M2 Heavy Industrial District on lots 4, 5, and the west 35 feet of 3 on Block 5 of the Earl's Addition. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit with site plan approval in order to operate an auto sales facility on the site. I list for you the existing zoning and land uses. The adjacent zoning and land use, the reason we are here for a conditional use permit, is to the north is single-family residential, south is M1, east is M2, and the west is M2. The site is designated as commercial district according to the city's comprehensive land use plan. Therefore, the requested use would be in compliance with the plan, would be a commercial entity. Access to the property will be from Northeast 28th Street and Jean Lane. The site is zoned M2 Heavy Industrial District and does not allow for this type of facility without a conditional use permit with site plan approval. Therefore, the applicant is seeking this conditional use permit to allow for this use on the site because the property not only fronts a state highway, but it also abuts residential. Based on the square footage of the building, the applicant is required to have 4 customer parking spaces. These will need to be clearly marked and striped. Landscaping is also required and is based on the submitted site plan with your review. In addition, all parking and maneuvering areas must be a paved surface for this facility. Legal notice regarding this public hearing was published in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on December 29, 2003. Property owner notification instruments for property owners within 200 feet of the site were sent out October 31st, 2003, and 20 property owners were notified. Staff received 0 in favor and 0 opposed. At the meeting on January 13, 2004, the P&Z Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of this conditional use permit CU 001-04. Therefore, I formally submit a copy of the said ordinance as well as a site plan for your review and approval.
Okay, members of the council, any questions for Mr. Pliska regarding this request for conditional use permit? Councilmember Williams?
Mr. Pliska, since this is going to be a conditional use permit and it's an industrial area, I'd ask you this in a pre-council, but I want to be able for the people out here to hear it too.
Yes, sir.
Landscape qualifications and requirements.
Yes, sir. Since it is with site plan approval, we did require some extensive landscaping. Not only will he provide a buffer between him and the residential to the north, which will be a 10-foot screening device with a tree every 25 foot and a solid fence barrier. He has also indicated that he'll be placing permanent planters along the close to the right-of-way portion of the property along Jean Lane and along Northeast 28th Street.
Okay, do you know if these permanent planters, do you know if they'll be planters or pots?
We're going to request that they be permanent planters.
Okay.
In terms of something that cannot be transported or moved.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Further questions from the council before I open the public hearing? Okay, there being none, I'll open the public hearing at this time regarding item number 9. Mr. Amal Othman, you are in the audience tonight. Do you wish to address the council or just be available in the event council has a question? Okay, members of the council, any questions for Mr. Othman? Okay, there are none. Thank you, Mr. Othman. Members of the audience, anyone here, first of all, wishing to speak against this request by Mr. Othman for a conditional use permit on this property? Okay, anyone wishing to speak in favor? Okay, there being none, I'll close the public hearing at this time and we'll move to the corresponding ordinance. Councilmember Hurley?
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance 02004-001-15.
Councilmember Fowler?
I'd like to second that, Mayor, also with comment. I'd like to thank Mr. Othman if he's the one that's done the cleanup on the property so far. It looks a great deal better, and I want to thank you or your staff, or if it's y'all in case, thank you for the cleanup that y'all have done. It does appear to be a lot cleaner place now.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? There being none, if you will register your vote at this time. And that passes by unanimous vote. Item number 10 is an explanation of the proposed charter amendments and the process. Our acting city manager, Tom Muir, will address this item at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. What I'm going to be reading is or presenting for the citizens here in the chambers and on and viewing at home is a recap of the charter propositions that are currently on the ballot. I'll be reading from a document that will be going out in the Proud and Progressive later this week. Proposition 1 is boundaries and annexation, and the question it asks: shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to eliminate the requirement of a petition for annexation or disannexation by deleting Section 1.03 and revising Section 1.04? Proposition 1 revises the Charter by eliminating Section 1.03 that outlines annexation of territories by petition. If approved, the Charter will allow the city to annex or disannex territory with or without the consent of the inhabitants of the territory. Inhabitants of annexed territory who are provided municipal services, meanwhile, must pay taxes according to city laws and are bound by acts, ordinances, resolutions, and regulations of the city. Proposition 2 is regarding streets and right-of-way. And the question is, shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to clarify that the city has exclusive control over over streets and rights-of-way situated in the city by adding Section 2.02a. Well, this proposition gives the city exclusive control and jurisdiction of all alleys, streets, highways, gutters, and sidewalks, public lands, and public ways. The city may regulate, locate, relocate, remove, or prohibit locations of pipes, lines, wires, or other property of any sort on these rights-of-way. Proposition 3 is regarding term limits. And the question is, shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to eliminate term limits by deleting Section 3.01a? If this proposition is approved, it will remove term limits of elected officials. According to the present charter, a person who has served as an elected official in any one elected office for 3 consecutive terms may not run for re-election for the same office. The office of city council member, regardless of place number, is a single elected office. Proposition 4 is regarding the qualifications of the city council. And the question it poses is, shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended by revising Section 3.02, paragraph 7, and 4.03 paragraph 7 to allow a financial interest in any contract with the city or the sale of any property, goods, or service to the city if in compliance with state law. This proposition would allow elected officials to participate in the bidding process for sale of property, goods, and services to the city. The revision includes the sale of equipment, materials, and other articles to the city, provided transactions comply with state law. Proposition 5 is regarding compensation of the council. The question is, shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to provide that city council members shall serve without compensation by revising Section 3.05? This proposition continues to allow council members and the mayor to be reimbursed for actual expenses supported by receipt, but eliminates the payment of $10 per special or regular city council meeting. Proposition 6 is concerning the auditor. Shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to delete the requirement that no auditor may serve for more than 5 consecutive years by revising Section 5.06? This proposition eliminates the maximum number of consecutive years a private firm may serve the city in performing the annual financial audit. The charter currently limits the number of consecutive years to 5. Proposition 7 asks, shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to allow the city manager no more than 6 months severance pay in the event of termination by revising section 9.01 paragraph B. The proposition allows the city council to approve up to 6 months severance pay for the city manager should he or she be dismissed. The charter currently allows up to only 60 days pay. Proposition 8 is concerning the municipal court judge. And the question is, shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to provide for the term and removal procedures for the municipal court judge by revising section 9.06 paragraph D? The proposition will change the term of office of the municipal court judge. This brings the charter in accordance with state law. The charter currently states that the term of the judge shall coincide with that of the mayor. This amendment would also allow for the removal of the judge by a 2/3 vote of the city council. Proposition 9. It asks, shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to eliminate the residency requirement for the city secretary by revising section 9.09? This proposition, actually, as stated, would eliminate the residency requirement for the city secretary. The charter currently states that the city secretary must establish residency in the city within 6 months of being hired. Proposition 10 is concerning our civil service. And the question is, shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to 1. Allow the Civil Service Commission to consider for promotion employees in lower classified positions if there are not at least 3 sworn employees with 2 or more years service in the next lower position, and 2. Require a person who is demoted from the position of assistant police or fire chief to be placed on a reinstatement list for the highest rank the person earned by competitive examination by revising section 11.14 paragraph A and adding section 11.19A. This proposition actually allows the Civil Service Commission to offer promotional exams to employees who are in lower classified positions if there are not at least 3 sworn employees with 2 or more years of service in the next lower position. This also requires a person who is demoted from the position of assistant police or fire chief to be placed on a reinstatement list for the highest rank the person earned by competitive examination. The second of these proposed changes regarding the assistant police and fire chiefs, it mirrors state civil service rules and allows the city to keep employees who have moved up through the ranks. Proposition 11 is regarding state law requirements. Shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to change the residency requirement for a candidate to conform with state law by revising section 3.01 paragraph 3 and section 4.03 section 4.03 paragraph 3. This proposition would bring the city charter into compliance with changes in state law, specifically stating residents are qualified to run for elected office if they have resided in the city for 12 months prior to the election rather than the filing date. And the final proposition, Proposition 12, is just is regarding technical and clarifying corrections. The question is, shall the Haltom City Home Rule Charter be amended to make non-substantive grammatical and contextual corrections and eliminate redundancies by eliminating sections 3.01 paragraph E, 3.01 paragraph F, and revising section 3.02 paragraph D, section 3.03, 4.03 paragraph paragraph 10, 11.08 paragraph B, and 11.09 paragraph A. Again, the proposition allows 4 corrections to the charter in grammar and context. It also would eliminate sections of the charter that are stated more than once. That concludes the review of the propositions. I do want to take this opportunity to remind the citizens, as I've reminded staff last week, that early voting, we are currently in early voting, The City Hall is the early voting polling place, and as citizens come to visit City Hall, they need to keep in mind that it is a polling place, and that electioneering or any type of thing like that on the premises is strictly prohibited. So we need to keep that in mind as we go through our day here at City Hall. With that, I'll take any questions that anybody may have.
Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Muir? Councilmember Williams?
Mr. City Manager, can you tell the people in the audience here and via TV where copies of this are available at that they can pick up before going to vote if they wish?
Copies of this sheet, again, will be sent to all residents here in Haltom City later in the week. They're available at the City Hall, the library, just about any public building that we've got. There is a this information is also on our website. And I imagine there's probably other places I'm not thinking of, but we've tried to make it available to everybody.
Do we have copies here in the back tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Muir. Item number 11, if you're following the agenda, has been pulled. We will move to item number 12, but before we do that, this one may take a few minutes. Let's take a 10-minute break. It's 10 minutes till 9. Let's be back in at 9 o'clock, ready to convene following this recess. We'll have to wait a second till we can round up a city manager.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted real quick, my name is Mindy Wilson, I live at 5316 Lucille Street, and I just wanted to thank the city manager for reading that. As I came up to vote today, this was very unclear to me, and I don't like to vote on something I don't understand, and I just wanted to tell you thank you for reading this. I didn't feel any political pressure at all, and I'm glad that I talked with the city secretary too, but thank you for reading that.
Mr. Muir, we're at item number 12, consideration and or action approving this matter of the ad valorem tax freeze. I believe this is a second reading. You want to introduce that to us, and we'll proceed from here.
Thank you, Mayor. Back on November 10th, the council approved the first reading of this ordinance. What the ordinance does is enact a senior tax freeze as provided by state law for residents who are disabled or over 65 years of age. Their taxes, if this were to be passed, their taxes would be frozen. It does not freeze the tax rate. It does not freeze the appraisal of it. It freezes the amount the citizens pay in taxes to the city. It can be changed. The only way it can be changed is if the homeowner makes an improvement to his property, a substantial improvement of I think 25% in value, that will cause it to change. Or if the homeowner sells his property and moves to another house within the city, that will change the freeze. There's a mathematical process that's a nightmare to explain, and I won't go into it tonight. But the freeze will, some of the freeze will be transferred to the new property. But the tax freeze would take effect for the fiscal year of next fiscal year, but it would be for the taxing year starting January of 2005. Really, just bringing this forward to y'all for consideration is just the second reading of this thing. If there are any questions or comment from the council, I'll certainly be able to entertain them and listen to them.
Councilmember Fowler, you had your light on first, and then Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had one question. Without getting into the logistics of how this is done and all, a question that was posed to me, or I think it was actually brought up during pre-council. What would you do, let's say, if someone were 65 years old, a gentleman, and they passed away, and the spouse, the woman, was 60? Would that eliminate the tax freeze at that point? Would it go back to being property on the tax roll at the new rates? Or I mean, there's a lot of questions on this thing that I don't have answers for and don't know about, and I don't know that anyone's real clear on the whole thing.
Well, I may have to defer to Wayne for some help there.
I'm glad to address that, Tom. The statute, if you remember, when we first discussed this, it was a time period when we were actually waiting on the results of the constitutional amendment, and then we had a topic on the agenda right after the constitutional amendment was approved. The constitutional amendment was approved by the voters. We also have the state legislature that adopted a law to try to explain some of the ramifications of the constitutional amendment. But the way the law reads on that question, Councilmember Fowler, is that if an individual, a senior citizen, in your example, qualifies for the tax freeze and he or she dies, if their surviving spouse is 55 years of age or older when the individual dies, and if the residence homestead becomes the residence homestead of the surviving spouse, then the tax freeze continues on the home.
So that actually would actually somewhat lower some of the requirements then, some of the ages.
Effectively, it could. That's correct.
Further questions?
Not currently.
Councilmember Fowler.
Thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
For lack of confusion, I'm going to follow up on his before I ask my question. Suppose the person deceased is over 65, has the exemption. That exemption goes on through the current year if that person, the survivor, is under 55. They will still get the tax exemption for that year. The next year, is that right?
That's correct. The tax freeze, the limitation on the total taxes would remain the same for that tax year, but the next year the limitation would no longer apply unless the surviving individual qualified through age or through a disability. Remember, this also applies to disabled persons.
Well, this 54-year-old spouse, now, will that spouse have to wait until they're 65 before they can reapply after that?
I believe it would, Councilmember Williams, and they would have to qualify at that time.
Okay, let's clarify the constitutional amendment that was passed. I don't see anybody here to speak on it tonight. We have in the past. And I apologize, this was supposed to be put on one of the first meeting in January, I think, and we had held it off. We were waiting on some legal questions to be answered. I think somebody said there was like 92% of the people that had already voted in favor to freeze the tax. The actual amendment was, it wasn't to freeze the tax, it was to give the taxing entities the opportunity as to whether they wanted to freeze them or not. And then if the taxing entity decided not to freeze them, then it gave those people the right to get a petition to turn in to ask for an election. The council cannot call for an election.
That's correct.
Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay, and then actually the vote wasn't to freeze the tax. The vote was to allow the entities to have the decision of whether they wanted to freeze the tax or not.
That's correct. The constitutional amendment allowed counties, cities, and junior college districts to put a freeze on the taxes of residential homestead properties if the owners of those properties either were senior citizens or disabled.
Okay, so
it's not an automatic freeze.
If the council decides to freeze them, then that's all it takes. If they decide not to freeze them, then they have to petition for a special election.
That's correct.
To have them.
And then the voters of Haltom City will decide whether or not to place a tax freeze on residential homestead properties for those individuals who qualify.
Right. And also the county, I guess the city has this, the county tax assessor, I spoke with her, Betsy Price, and she had told me that they don't put anybody out for not paying their taxes, a senior citizen like that, that they just continue to let the taxes mount up, and then whenever the heirs take over the property, they settle the taxes that time. They don't force anybody. We don't force anybody out, do we? Okay. Thank you.
You can't force them out on if they're on a homestead in the state of Texas. You can't evict them. Ad valorem taxes can accrue up to 20 years statute limitations.
Okay, any further questions for either the attorney or Mr. Muir before we proceed with this item? There being none, we have one speaker's request form filled out. Did I see someone else waving their hand back here? Mr. Eklund, did you fill out one of these? It is not a public hearing. I will allow you the consideration if you want to go get one of these and fill them out, as well as anyone else here in the audience. That is kind of a finer point of procedure. If this is a public hearing, you don't need to fill one of these out, but it's not listed as a public hearing, so we do need one of these. Mr. Bob Watkins, if you would, come forward at this time. You filled out.
He wants to let Mr. Eklund speak first.
Okay.
Let's let Mr. Eklund speak
We
first.
can do that. Mr. Eklund?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor, then, if you could clarify, and I don't know if it'd be for you or the city manager, whichever one would like to take it. So, actually what would happen would, this provides an opportunity, the law that was passed in the state provides an opportunity for citizens to petition, if they choose to, for a ballot to be placed, for a ballot initiative to be placed, or initiative to be placed on the ballot itself. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct. If the council does not take an affirmative action to pass that, the citizens can petition and have an item put on the ballot to get this passed, and there's no limit to the number of times they can petition or the number of elections they can have to get it passed. But once it is passed, there is no going back. You cannot undo it.
So once it, say this, if you did pass a tax freeze for the seniors or disabled, then it would never be repealed. There's no way to repeal it at all. If the seniors, even if they brought back another petition that said, y'all cut our services and we want to kick in more money or whatever, then it still wouldn't provide for any option to repeal that tax.
The law does not allow for that, no.
Okay, and then another question. What were the deadlines that there have been deadlines thrown around, and I'm going to write them down this time, that this could be enacted, or what were those dates?
It would freeze the taxes at whatever they're paying for this year for '04. So any new increase that would be possibly passed down that would be effective for the next taxing year, that increase would not be passed along to them. They would pay the amount they are paying for this year.
Okay, and I know Mr. Eklund, I appreciate the website that he's taken part in and trying to get information out to the citizens, and I thank him for that after reading some of that material and the material y'all provided. What did y'all determine would be the cost? Well, I guess Mr. Eklund will probably answer that. I guess that's all I have currently, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Eklund, before you began, Councilmember Sutton had his light on. Is there something you wish to
Well,
say
just
at this
to
time?
clarifying, it seemed when Councilman Fowler was talking that the law was passed so that the citizens could petition for this, and that was not the intention of the law. The law was so that city councils could act to provide this tax relief for seniors, and the petition process is one of the ways that the citizens can overrule a council that doesn't act in accordance with their wishes.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay, Mr. Eklund, if you'll give us your name and address for the record, and I said 5 minutes a moment ago, this form says 6. So your name and address for the record, please.
I appreciate every minute I get. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Ray Eklund. I live at 2532 Oakwood Terrace, and tonight's discussion about the senior tax freeze on the second reading, I'd like to remind everybody an idea about illusionary relationships. Okay? People used to think that the stork brought the babies, because every time there was a baby, there was a stork on the roof, and this goes back to the Dutch days. It was an illusion that they came to this conclusion. Right? It was really caused because the house was warm. Right? And we have this illusion that there's a problem when there's not. Right? There's not the biggest problem with the tax base for our seniors, right, as the problem is really with the Medicaid and the expenses for their medicine. So we need to identify what the problem really is and what we should do about that. You're right. This was an option provided to the cities, right, whether the city, each individual city across the state would decide if this suited them or not. Okay? Now, the city of Bedford looked at this, and I was privy to attend their meeting. It lasted for 2 hours of discussion. They don't have a time limit. They're very eloquent speakers. Right? And at the conclusion of this 2 hours of nice discussion, they came to the conclusion that it should go before the voters, right? Or should be declined by the council. And I think that's what we should do here as well. When I discussed this issue with some of the proponents after the last meeting, this is what I found out. When I said, we're all on a fixed income. I go to work, I punch a clock, I'm on a fixed income. I'm based on this many dollars per hour, this many hours per week, and whatever I can beg overtime out of my boss, and that's limited. So I think everybody's on fixed income to some extent or another. They suggested to me that I should get a better education, get a better job. Now, those of you that know where I work would say I have a good job, right? And when this discussion ended after about 15, 20 minutes, and it takes a long time, sometimes longer than that, to get down to what really drives a person. It turns out they're concerned about their estate that passes to their heirs, okay? And we all understand that. What we're talking about here is a few dollars a year. We pay the seniors, with the deductions, everything, pay maybe $100 a year in taxes for all the services that we provide. And if inflation and good fortune rises the value of the property by 5%, they'd pay $105 next year. Okay? I believe this city's worth $105. I believe it's worth an extra $5. Okay? I think it's a mistake to say that they shouldn't participate fully in our society like the rest of us do. We should all be equal partners in the city, right? And we should all benefit from the rising values through good planning and good leadership, right? And good care of your property, right? And they should therefore pay the tax to make sure that the streets are there, make sure the fire service is there, and you know, if we didn't have good fire service, their insurance would go up to the roof. There's some kind of a rating system for that. So we need to keep all those things in mind. We've conducted a poll on our website, haltomcitycitizens.com. Overwhelming response was that we should not have the tax freeze just all the way across the board. Now, there were some people that came through at the last minute and suggested that maybe it should be for persons that needed it. Unfortunately, the way the law is written, we're not allowed to decide means testing or any other matter. So it's either all or none, and it's from now on forward. That just doesn't sound like a very good plan. I've sent letters to each of you council members, invited you to the website to visit with pages and pages of discussion on this issue, and the graphs and all the backup material are there for you to enjoy and study. Okay? The council should deny this for the same reason that we discussed earlier. We need to get this city on financial track. Okay? We need to be careful. We need to bring the dollars in. We go out of our way to try to bring business in here. We have people that just do that. We want to bring developers in here. We want to keep this thing on track, and we should not do anything that backtracks on those efforts. Lastly, I know this is a political issue. It would be senseless not to say that. In the paper after the Bedford meeting, there was a headline that that talked about tax freeze backers plot next steps, and the quote in there, one way to save the people of Bedford tax dollars for a special election would be to target the individual who voted against this in the May election. I do not like to live in a country where people are targeted. Okay? I don't like to live in a place where bully schoolyard tactics are used. I'll talk to you, I'll visit with you, I'll give you my explanation, but to have that kind of attitude from one group against the rest of the groups, I think is improper. Backers say, and this is the argument, okay, that seniors have paid property taxes for years and therefore deserve a break. And I say I bought a Coke yesterday at the store and I drank it. And today I go back and buy another Coke and I'm going to drink it too. And that's going to go on every day, right, because I pay for the service and I get the service. Right? When I quit paying, I should quit getting the service. Right? We need to provide these services. It's a lot of money. It's $100,000 a year. And people will argue that that's not very much of our budget. It's 2 firemen, no matter how you cut it. It's 2 policemen. It's 2 water employees, or whatever we might purchase with those funds. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your time. I urge the council to please, this is a very serious matter, that we decline this at the second reading. Let it go to the voters if they choose to vote on it, like America's based on. Thank you.
Thank you, but you might want to remain at the stand for just a moment. Councilmember Fowler's light is on, Mr. Eklund, and he may have a question for you. I don't know. Councilmember Fowler.
I have a question for Mr. Eklund, a couple actually. Mr. Eklund, you had stated, and that's the information that we received. Is that correct, Mr. Muir? It would be, if we were to freeze it for this year, it would affect the budget by in the neighborhood of $100,000?
I don't recall the figure. Charles, do you recall at all?
I can help you.
Is that from the information that you received?
No, sir. It actually, next year will be 30,000, and then next year is 60,000, 70, 80, and it runs up. And when I come up with 100,000, is the projection that the city made was for $660,000 over 5 years. So your average is
you're saying so on average over the next 5 years would be 120,000 a year.
That's right. But next year will be.
And I'll say the projections we made are just that. I mean, we made a lot of assumptions that you can take with a grain of salt. I mean, you're putting in some aging factors, value factors. You know, we don't know who's still going to be here 5 years from now, what the age of the population is going to be. We didn't have that kind of data. We're just going on basic information.
Y'all
so
based
it's
it
a
off
best
census
guess.
data, though,
Right,
is that correct?
right, but it's a best. It was our best guess at it, and I submit that most of the other cities are taking their best shot at speculating what the cost or is going to be. I mean, some people want to call it lost revenue. Some people don't think it's anything lost because you never had it to begin with. So what's lost about it? It depends on your point of view. But from an administration standpoint, to us and to me, it is lost revenue. It's revenue that you've come to expect. It's revenue that you're used to planning for, that has been removed by some way, shape, or form by this law, by this mechanism. But the impact will be probably grow with each year as things age and get and happen. It's going to fall onto the other taxpayers to deal with it.
Okay. I get, as you stated, this is a political issue. You know, I'm not an idiot. No one else in here is. You know, people are going to point their fingers, but I look at, you know, and whether it's popular or not, have had seniors call me that say, hey, you know, it would be nice to have it. And then I've had seniors that call me that say I would qualify for it, but I don't want it, because if it means cutting the budget, and just as you'd mentioned, say, let's say cutting out 2 firemen, and they get ready to call 911 and their response time's down and they die, how much is that worth to them, that $100 or whatever a year, or $5 a month, or whatever it may be? And that hits on another issue. You know, at this point, we really don't have all the answers. We don't really know what all's going on. I mean, I can sit here tonight and we have numbers coming from the census. We have, questions over here and questions there, and I don't feel real comfortable with any of the answers that we've gotten. And it's no discredit to anyone. It's just I think this is a situation that we really it's an unknown. And I may not be on this council. I can assure you I won't be on this council probably after May. I can guarantee you that. But I don't think it's in any council's best interest to handcuff someone that much in the future without having all the answers in place. So, and it's a difficult deal because I want to do everything I can to help seniors and disabled. I feel like that we've already, by increasing the $50,000 homestead exemption and some of the other things that we've done, I think that we place great effort in doing what we can to relieve the tax burden off our seniors. But, there's just a lot of questions that I feel like need to be answered. And is this something that we might be better off looking at, or the council in May might be better off looking at, after a May election to see, they're going to be planning for the next budget, and they're the ones that are going to have to determine, if we cut 100,000 out, are we going to be able to give employee pay raises this year? We were only able to give a bonus this year, and which was very good, but are we going to be able to do employee incentives, pay raises? Are we going to have to cut positions? We raised the taxes a little over 6 cents this year and had to raise water and sewer rates, which are about to choke us to death. Have we looked at that? Is that going to affect those things? And are we going to have to turn right back around again next year and do the same thing? I just think it's a little early in the game right now to make these decisions. Personally, I don't have a problem if it's not going to affect the whole. I don't have a problem with us passing it at all. But I just don't feel like that we have enough information about the whole situation right now to make a valid judgment on it. And that's just my opinion. But, I would like to see it pass. And like I say, I can't state enough. I donated to the Senior Benevolent Dinner. 4 companies I had donated to it. I have a great concern for seniors. But that doesn't mean that I'm just going to go out here and make a decision and affect everyone else just because I care for seniors one way or another. That wouldn't be my duty as a council person. So I would just like to see us consider looking into it, in greater length. And I think that may be and that was my question to you. Do you feel like that you would be comfortable, and if it were looked at during the budget process, do you feel like that's a better time from the...
Well, what we've seen so far is, back to your comments about the tax exemption, we went from 40,000 in the city to 50. There was no discussion. Everybody was happy. It passed without much trouble. At the same time that the election was being held, this bill was running through the state law. Nobody knew it. Nobody here knew anything about it. The same people that promoted that promoted this exemption here. So maybe if we'd known about this law, we wouldn't have passed that law, okay, to allow the 50,000 exemption. Your point is well taken about waiting. Right? What we found out so far is that as we wait and learn more about this thing, there's more opposition to it. Okay? Right? There's more honest debate about it. Okay? This thing is the fastest moving fire you've ever seen. Okay? It passed in September, October at the state level, and it's zooming across the state on consent agendas without discussion, right? And affecting cities and 2 counties so far across the state. Okay? And as these things spread, right, as it moves through the county offices, right, that means that the seniors wouldn't be paying increased county taxes for those things and the hospital districts and those other things that are covered under there. So that burden is going to fall back to the under 65 homeowner crowd. Okay? Not everybody, just this one little sector is going to have to keep paying. Right? And it's going to have to fall back to the taxpayers at large. Right? It takes our city, if I'm not mistaken, about 1 cent per $100,000 to bring in the front door. Okay? So if we lose $100,000 average, you're going to have to raise the penny tax. You're going to raise that on those businesses as well as the homeowners. Everybody's going to end up having to pay for this when there doesn't appear to be a real need. Okay? There doesn't appear to be a real need, right? Because we know nobody gets thrown out of their house. Right? There's forms to fill out. You stay in your house. And it's about estate building, and that's wrong. That's wrong. It's wrong to take it out of this family and give it to that family.
Councilmember Fowler, any further questions for Mr. Edlin?
Not currently. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Williams, I believe you had your light on.
And by the way, if you don't want to be a target, don't run for council. Mr. Counselor, comment was made a while ago that these taxes would be froze, but the tax rates and the home values would not be froze. Yeah, I mean,
They're just on the books.
I mean, that was a good thing to put in there. You know, we're going to freeze your taxes, but we're not going to freeze your rate or your value. It doesn't matter if they freeze the taxes, what the rates or the values are. So it shows you there wasn't a lot of thought put in that when they did it, because that was a statement that didn't actually need to be put in there.
This is a limitation on the total amount of taxes that a senior citizen or disabled person will pay on their residence homestead. And the value of the house could go up, the tax rate can go up, but the amount of taxes that they're paying will stay the same as the date or the year that the taxes are frozen.
Right. In the, I know there's been some stuff coming before the Attorney General on this. Is there a state law or a federal law that prohibits giving a special consideration to a certain group?
Well, the law in general, the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution requires that people be given equal protection under the law, and therefore, based upon that, there are several court rulings that state that you have to treat people equally when you apply the law. In this regard, the Texas Constitution has a similar provision, and because the fact that the Constitution was amended to allow this to occur, amended by a vote of the electorate, most likely it would be upheld that this is not a violation of the Texas Constitution.
Okay. And Mr. Eklund, we know Haltom City politics. That's good. Pretty well. You know that if this body does not freeze the senior taxes, you know what will happen.
I know that you'll be, I know there are people that will point to this in the short term and say in the short term, oh, look what happened. Okay, these people did a bad thing for the seniors. In the long term, you'll be helping the seniors, you'll be helping the families, okay? You'll do the right thing. And sometimes being an elected official is about doing the right thing. Right? And
well,
it's a difficult process.
What I'm trying to say, though, Mr. Eklund, is we can vote not to do this and let it go to the citizens. And trust me, we're in a community that loves special elections. If we do not pass it, sit on our hands, then we have another group of citizens that go out and get the, what's the percentage, Mr.?
5%.
5% of the registered voters.
5% of the registered voters. Talking about 1,000 votes. Yeah, they got 650 to throw me out. That was easy. So 1,000 to get, windfall profit. It's a cakewalk for them. I agree. We're fighting. It's a battle that we're not going to win. Or I say we, the people that aren't in favor of freezing the taxes. I'm at the Senior Citizen Center 2 or 3 times a month. I talk to the seniors down there. Some of them are very in favor of having this tax freeze put, and some of them understand the fire department. If it freezes, we're still going to have fire, and we're still going to have police officers. I don't know where we'll cut. I guess the next council that come in will just have to raise the taxes, and the people from 64 to whatever has the house do it. So we can pass this and go ahead and let them have their exemption, or we can not pass it, and what will happen, you'll see 1,050, 1,075 signatures come in for a special election. You'll see the city tore apart. Everything that can go wrong, does go wrong, will be blamed on the council. They'll make up stuff. It will be passed. So I ask you, is it really worth going into the fight? I know you and I both own quite a bit of real estate in town. and we pay our share of the taxes. And I've never heard you complain about your taxes. More or less, your renters, I've heard more about that than I have your taxes, which your renters are paying your taxes for you, per se. Is it worth the fight and the arguing? And I'm tired.
Mr. Williams, I understand, and you and I have had a multitude of conversations in the last couple of months, and I appreciate all of your time. I really do. We've lost a lot of good people in this country over a lot of years fighting for the right to vote, okay? Fighting for the right to have open discussion, open debate, you know, to have these things go on, okay? We're very fortunate in the last 2 months to have any debate on this. It was, in fact, on the consent agenda, okay? To have any discussion on it at all. I'm not prepared to turn my back on those people and the idea that the citizens can make the best decision for the community, right? We'll deal with the politics. We'll deal with, you say there's 1,000 people get up the petition. Well, God bless them, let them go do it, okay? And there's what, 10,000 voters in the town?
19,000.
19,000. So let's let 19,000 people decide if the 1,000 people are right or they're wrong. Okay? We're going to do that next week on another issue. Okay? But we're going to do that. That's what we should do on this issue. This is an important issue about how we're going to deal, what our policies are going to be, and what's right in this community. Okay? It's not that we want to harm the seniors in any way. It's we want to be fair to the young families. Okay? There's lots of issues that we can go on all night about. We won't do that. Okay? I'm asking the council to please put it into the hands of the 19,000 voters. Okay? I'll do my part to make sure both sides are heard. You guys have been to my website. I brought both sides in on issues. Okay? It's about freedom of speech. It's about informing the electorate out here so we know what the best thing is for our decision. So I know it's going on, dragging on, and it's very disruptive, but a simple vote tonight to decline this thing will allow the citizens to do what they're supposed to do, which is petition their government, okay, and then go to the polls and vote. Thank you.
I have one thing that troubles me, Mr. Eklund. I don't know if you read the local paper or not, the Star-Telegram. Northeast section every week, usually on Monday, over in the left-hand column states what is going to be on the agenda for the night, or what the, if something's going on. I mean, just very minute stuff they put in there. And I was very surprised when I breezed through the paper this morning. I didn't see anything in there about this being on the agenda. I know that we have some seniors and some people on Silver-haired legislators have come spoke about this. And I see that they're not here tonight. I don't know whether they're not aware of it or just apathy for it or what it is. But I'm concerned about there's no one here on that side to speak. So shame on the Star-Telegram for not printing that. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. But I'll go ahead and listen to what I think Mr. Watkins is probably in the over 65 group, so I'll listen to what he has to say.
Council Member Sutton, you have questions for Mr. Eklund?
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Ray. Hey, thanks for doing the website. I think that is a great thing for people to go in and look at and be able to see that there are many sides to this issue. Anytime you're considering changing a tax code within an entity, a taxing entity, I think it's real important to go in with both eyes open. And I think that your website does that. It brings out some of the issues that need to be brought out and talked about in regards to a tax thing. You and I sit, I think, on a little bit different sides of the fence on that, and we sometimes color our speech a little bit in order to say things. And I thank Councilmember Williams for bringing note to the fact that whenever we talk about budget cuts, and when we lose revenue, and we equate that to a policeman or a fireman, that's usually considered political talk, scare tactics that we're doing in order to make our point a little bit stronger. And I don't think that anyone really knows how we would do those budget cuts. Councilman Williams, I think, made a good point that we don't know where those budget cuts would be, or even if there would be budget cuts because of the projections there. But I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for the website. You'd mentioned something about the consent agenda, that this was on the consent agenda, and I was not aware that it was. This is in open session, and the first one was in open session too. What did you mean by that?
No, it was in fact put on the consent agenda the first time I was in here, and I spoke to a couple, 3 council members, and finally the mayor, with my little yellow piece of paper, took it off the consent agenda because I felt like this thing was not just regular business.
Right.
You know?
And I appreciate you doing that too. And I appreciate you saying that. You're aware that the city of Southlake, we talked about the city of Bedford turning it down and giving it to the voters there in Bedford to decide whether or not they're going to have that by petition. But you're aware that Southlake recently passed. Do you think that they made a mistake, or do you think that what were their reasons for probably wanting to pass that?
Southlake, and I have the data back there. I'm sorry I didn't bring it up here. Southlake average house tax value is $300,000. $300,000. Okay, they have a very smaller percentage of over 65 people. So when you put those two factors in, they have a different ball of wax, and that's exactly why the state would have given this option to each individual place to look at, and let each individual place look at. I'm not here to speak for Southlake. Okay? I know that their houses are much more valuable. Their income, their disposable income in Southlake and Colleyville is more than the average income in our city. Okay? That's the money they got left over after paying their bills is more than we make. So it's two different. It's an apples and an orange thing. And
so, in other words, maybe the city of Southlake has money to throw away that their government, their city council there feels like they can take money, and is that maybe the reasoning that I'm hearing, that they feel like it's okay to waste the taxpayers' money?
I think that would be a misstatement of my comments.
What is it that they did that for them?
That's not my problem what Southlake does. I live in Haltom City. I've lived in here for a long time. I'm going to be here for a long time yet till I'm 65. Okay, but our concern is with Haltom City. Our tax rate, their tax rate's different than ours. Their valuations are different than ours. Their business mix is different than ours. Their social economic things are all different than ours, much different than ours. Okay, so we should really look at our city and our future and our tax rate and our demographics to figure out what we should do. Okay, and that's why I'm asking this council to not pass this thing and give us some time. If the petitioners want to bring it forward, then that'll give us time to visit with each other and see if we can figure out how to make this thing work and give the councils opportunities to make a longer range plan so that this doesn't harm our city. Right? I still have problems with the social political idea of taking money out of one guy's pocket and giving it to another guy. I got a problem with that. And I think there's a lot of people that would. And again, it's because we're not allowed the means test. We aren't allowed to go in and say, who needs this tax freeze? We're not allowed to do that from the law. So it's a very poorly written law. My discussions with persons that have talked to the state people is that it was rushed through, okay, that these lobbyists came down, they bulwarked the state legislature, they dumped it on the local councils, okay, and said, oh, we're done. If this thing passes, it's not going to affect the state's budget one nickel. Okay, they get their money from sales tax, so it's going to affect this city's budget, right, and all the other cities. But it's a very poorly written law based on pressing stuff through. You've never seen a law go this fast, and you've never seen the reaction go as fast. These people that spoke before this council 2 weeks ago or a month ago want to rush it right on through. And why would you do that?
Okay, I didn't mean.
Further questions?
I certainly do. Yeah, I'm allowing Ray to continue to talk, but if you could.
If we can stay focused.
I want to stay focused.
A little bit.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, please.
I'll try to answer your questions.
Yeah. I didn't mean to make you say that Colleyville wastes money or things like that, but I was bringing up the point to say that the reasons that you gave me alluded to that. And all I'm saying is that Southlake had probably some pretty good reasons that may be worth our citizenry knowing about and considering whenever they do this, along with the reasons that you give. Wouldn't you say that's true?
I don't know if they even got to speak there. I don't know, this has passed many local governments with nobody even getting to talk about
But
it.
what I'm
Now
asking is...
Bedford, they had 2 hours that I was privy
Right.
to, right? And they said, no way. They said, we're not going to do it.
But Ray, what I'm asking is don't you think Southlake had some good reasons for why they wanted to do this?
I can't speak for Southlake. I can't.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'm sure that it was either political or they got more money than they know what to do with it. Whatever you say.
The point I'm saying is that there are reasons why people would want to do this, and Southlake is a reason. It is a case in point that there are communities that may decide to do this. In Haltom City, we need to go into this with both eyes open. Now, as far as putting this back to the people, Ray, whenever 90-some% of the people have already voted for this, and some, as by our own admissions, that different council members have said, have thought that this was going to be enacted by their vote that time, and 90% of them said that. Do you feel that they have already spoken then?
No, I do not. I'll tell you why. Because nobody that went into that ballot box, nobody that was anywhere near that election, the 90% or the 10%, none of them had any knowledge of the wording of this thing. Nobody knew that this was unrevocable. Okay? Nobody knew that. Okay? Mm-hmm. Nobody knew, in fact, by the way, Mr. Williams, if the tax rate goes down, so do their taxes. You talked about it going up, but if it drops for some reason, they can do some language on that. So the 90% didn't vote for this. They voted for an idea. Okay? They voted for an idea that my council would be able to look at this thing and go forward.
Mr. Eklund, don't you think that whenever we say things like 90% of them didn't know, that is a bit presumptuous?
No,
there's people in this room
I'll go a step further than that. I'll say 100% didn't know because the 90% voted for it and the 10% voted against it, and neither side knew that it was unrevocable. So I say 100% of the voters didn't know.
Gentlemen, if I could, we'll come back to that.
Well, okay,
I think the points have been made.
Well, I was just trying to answer this question.
And I understand. I'm not scolding either one of you. I'm just saying.
I started writing these questions down, so I stayed on.
I think the points have been made by both sides. Councilmember Sutton, any further point?
That's good.
Okay. Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Fowler have spoken previously. Further questions for Ray before we go to someone else, or before we get to Mr. Watkins?
No, Mr. I just know that I know you deal a lot with the area on aging and the agency on aging and all, and I just thought through the mayor's council I might see what your take on this item was in dealing with some of the other communities through the mayor's council and all. What's your perspective of this item, if you feel like sharing?
Sure. What I have discovered in talking with the other mayors in Tarrant County is a need to proceed with caution, and not just jump up and do something because it happens to be the popular thing. To be sure we have all the facts, and with the legislature talking about revamping the funding on education, what kind of impact that could conceivably have, I think that has a lot of the mayors a little bit antsy about this particular item. My own personal preference, I have said all along I'm in favor of freezing the taxes, for the city freezing the taxes like the school district does, and I haven't wavered off of that. However, there may be some wisdom in taking a closer look at some of these things. We still have a number of months left in the year before, if the people of Haltom City did want to do anything about this to impact their taxes in 2005, we still have several months where that could take place. And while one side of me says let's go ahead and do this because I know the mood in the community, and I think Councilmember Williams is right that if we say no tonight, you can see a petition getting going, and 1,000, 1,100 signatures is probably within the range of that. I do think there are some questions that we would do well to be sure we have the answers for before we proceed.
And I can agree with you. I don't personally feel like that those have all been answered tonight. And is that what you're saying also? Is you feel like some of the questions are still out there? I mean, I look at this, and when you're still, one person say it's revocable, and one saying it's not, and then one saying it's you know, I'm not well versed on it enough. One saying the tax rate goes down, so does the rate go down, but if the tax rate goes up, it stays the same. You know, I know on a freeze, but I don't feel like we've been given enough information. Not at staff's fault. I don't think anyone knows all the ramifications of this legislation yet.
I just don't believe Councilmember Fowler tonight is the time for a decision to be made on this because of some of these things. That's just one person's
Well, and that's
opinion.
okay. I coincide with your beliefs on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Williams, then Councilmember Branson. You have a further question for Mr. Eklund? He stood a long time, and he might like to sit down.
That's what I do for
Well,
lunch.
I got
That's okay.
I got two questions. One, it may freeze before we leave here. And two, when is a good time to freeze? If this isn't the good time, when's a good time to do it?
I think when we've got some of these things a little clearer. I thought all of these answers were pretty clear a few weeks ago, a few months ago. But in my own mind, there are some things that I don't think tonight we have the answers to. And until that time comes, whenever that is, I would be more comfortable in waiting to satisfy my mind, because I want to do what's best for the people of Haltom City and for the city as a whole. I couldn't tell you when.
I don't
when
have
I
the
get
minute.
the answer.
I don't have the minutes in the meeting here for me. I think this is my was my Virgin flight on substitute motions when I did this, when it came up the first time. You know, for the second reading, I said that I thought it'd be a good idea that we waited because the Attorney General had some things. There were some inquiries into the Attorney General. And Wayne, do you know anything right now that's before the Attorney General's office that would?
No, not aware of anything right now.
Okay. All right, I'll wait and listen to the older
Okay.
gentleman back there.
Councilmember Branson, and then when she's finished, Mr. Eklund, we're going to let you sit down.
Well,
and,
it's no problem, Mr.
and
Mayor.
we'll proceed from here. Councilmember Branson.
Actually, my question's for Mr. Muir,
Okay.
so if he wants to sit down. Have we had any type of actuarial tables run, since that's probably the only accurate way that we can get calculations on natural evolution deaths based off population, ages, and that sort of thing? And if we haven't, do you have any idea what kind of cost it would be to have an actuarial study based on the Haltom City demographics?
To answer your first question, no, we haven't. And to answer your second question, I'm not sure.
We don't have anybody in-house with actuarial type?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Not at all.
Could maybe we find out what an actuarial
We can,
study would cost?
We can endeavor to do that, certainly.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Attorney, I have one question. I think you said the Attorney General has not ruled on this or given an opinion. Do you have any feel for when that might be coming forth?
No, I'm not familiar with any issues pending before
There's
the
not
Attorney
even anything
General.
before him.
Okay.
Is there?
Nothing before him?
Is there, Counselor?
I'm not familiar with any
Okay.
any pending requests for opinions at the Attorney General's office on this.
Okay.
Do you know of any?
Mr. Eklund got us off to quite a discussion on item number 12. Mr. Bob Watkins, if you'd like to come forward at this time, and you have 6 minutes. If you'll give us your name and address for the record, please.
Bob Watkins, 6140 Blue Spruce Circle. I wasn't quite as old a gentleman when I arrived tonight as I am.
Your nose will start
If you
growing.
straighten up, you may get older also. These are going to be more disjointed than my usual statements. I started writing when I got here, so I'm just going to hit some high points. I spoke with a state senator, and that state senator, from what I arrived from that state senator, was more or less what I thought. I believe that all government that could be handled on a state level, that's being handled on a federal level, should be on a state level. and right on down the road. I believe that everything should be handled by a city that's possible. Because I told that state senator that I thought that they were chickens for putting it off on us folks, but that I understood, and that the response I got indicated that that's the reason that that person voted the way they did. I voted. We get this 91% figure or whatever the figure is. I've heard everything from 80 to 91%. I voted yes. And I got up here a year ago, and I sometimes think I managed to lose 3 friends, one real good friend, a position on this council by my speech that I gave on the senior exemption. At that time, I'm going to go ahead and speak for those 3 people, and they may all kill me, but because I may be speaking incorrectly. But as I recall, none of the 3 thought that there should never be an exemption increase. They thought that when you are something over $1 million down, what you shouldn't do is, when you're in a hole, quit digging. It wasn't the time to do another $80,000 or so and have that problem. But to say that 91% of the people approve the freeze because that percentage of people voted for it doesn't really mean anything, because I voted for it. And I will, if this gets brought up as it should be brought up, I believe that the people ought to get to vote on something like this. And I will vote against it. I'm 66. If I can live another half a month, I'll be 67. But I'm going to vote against that. But I voted for the right for the citizens to vote on it down at this level, as it should be. We're listening to we're listening to a percentage of the people that are stating, because of this percentage, well, by the same token, somewhere around 18,000 people did not vote for that. What that indicates is that we've got this certain amount of people that get out and vote, and they've got a better lobby. They've got a better lobby because they're running out and see. But I'd like to see one more time. I believe that the citizens should get to vote on it. I'm troubled with the fact that you can't unfreeze this freeze. I never like to see something that you can't undo. I hear about this politics. Yes, it's politics. You sit and wonder. Well, let's see. Last time we had a thing like this, the vote was 1,500 to 500, and several people lost by 200 or 300 votes. There's probably a correlation in there someplace. There's probably some kind of a reason, and that scares everybody. Well, you can't run again, just right yet, and I don't know. I refuse to be intimidated by the folks my age threatening, whether verbally or not verbally, that if I do something, then my people are not going to be elected. Mr. Eklund had something the other day that I found interesting. It was representation without taxation. It's where I'll get to come in and say, well, I want you to pave my street, and I want this, I want a traffic light up there by my house, and I want this, and I want that, and I want the other. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't care if the taxes go up, because my taxes are not going to go up. That concerns me. That concerns me. But you're telling 19,000 people or somewhere, you're telling all of them, even the ones that's going to vote yes, you're telling 20,000 people that they don't have the right to vote on whether you do this or don't do it.
Mr. Watkins, you spoke for 5 minutes and 30
through.
seconds. You have, if you'd like to wrap up.
That's more than I can say usually with scribbled notes.
Okay. Councilmember Fowler and then Councilmember Sutton may have questions for you.
I have a question for you, Mr. Watkins.
I hadn't got any answers written down here, so I'm not going to know any answers.
Have you seen this? Have you seen this piece of literature?
Yeah, I saw that.
And you understand about now? You
I'm
understand?
disappointed I didn't get to print. You know, I like to make a dollar.
I'm sorry. Understand that you know, I mean, what you're saying is correct. I agree with you. I think it's great that it goes before the voters. You know, I've had the opportunity to be in 2 recall elections, and I think that's good that it goes before the voters. And if I'm not successful in this, then that's democracy, and that's what it's about. But you take things, and you said talk about politics. This thing starts off about how that the city council included a proposition to change the ethics rules in Haltom City by voting to include proposition number 4 on the ballot. Well, isn't that what democracy's about it going to the ballot? And that's what the council did, was took charter amendments that were proposed by a body that was brought before the council, or by the body that the council chose at that time to look at our charter and review it. They brought these things to us. We put it on the ballot, and yet we're being accused that we're unethical because we put something on a ballot for all the voters to vote for. So,
point of order, Mr. Mayor. Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Is this germane to the question that he's going to ask?
I have the floor. I'm sorry if I could.
It's a point of order.
Yeah, Mr. Fowler, I assume you are heading for something
yes, sir.
specific.
I was just
for
saying,
a
though,
question
that
for Mr. Watkins.
this is a political issue, and I don't understand how it's not democracy if, just like you said, when you place it before the voters, how can it even be construed to be a political issue whenever you're putting something before all the voters, it's not just us, but all voters in Haltom City, and give them the option on whether to pass the senior tax exemption or not. You know, I just think that's fair. I mean, we brought the charter, these charter items before the citizens tonight to give them an opportunity to see what's on there, and I think that's good government. Bring everything that you can before them and give them an opportunity to make the decisions themselves. And you know, I'm like the mayor. I think it's, you know, we're a little remiss on information at this point, and I think that it wouldn't be wise to move forward currently.
Well, I started to say you have no idea, but you have a perfect idea how much I hate to agree with. But that's my opinion also. I just can't help but believe that everybody should be able to vote, and that, never mind that piece, but I think the same thing about the charter. I was on the first two charter before this, and I was not on this one. And it was so that we wouldn't have different people. I mean, that we would have different people. If you'd served on a board and those people brought that to y'all, and
further questions, Mr. Fowler?
No, sir. Thank you.
Councilmember Sutton, and then when you're finished, we're going to call for some motion on item number 12.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Bob, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for your work in the city, because it is very appreciated what you do in the ZBA, and you have been an integral part and will probably continue to be an integral part of this city. You know from running the ZBA that whenever someone feels differently about something, there are ways to address that in a way that allows for discussion to continue in a plane that where respect is there. But if we want to bring the level of discussion down to something that's divisive and attack, we call it politics. Would you agree with that?
Not necessarily. I believe that a person, I believe y'all, not a person, I believe y'all, anybody sitting on the council, it is your duty, as I see it, particularly in an instance like this, to do what is the best for 40,000 people, almost. Not just the 1,000 people that are going to vote maybe like a person would or would not want that person to vote, and not just like the 19,000 people that are registered to vote. I believe you should do what is best. I believe you have to do what is best for the 40,000 people, or ever how many lives here. And this is what Mr. Eklund is saying.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about how many seniors is there? Less than 3,000, whatever it is.
Right.
So that means we got 37,000 other people we got to be worried about.
Let me ask you this. Can I take a hypothetical situation, maybe to illustrate my point a little bit, and ask you this? Suppose...
Speak slowly. I'm an aging gentleman.
No, you're
getting
not.
older as we go.
Yeah. Suppose half the citizens wanted to have the town motto as red and the other half wanted it blue. At some point, you're going to have to make a decision that's in the best interest of the whole city. Would you say that it's politics to make a decision, or would you have to go with what your feeling is the best thing for that city?
Your hypothetical here is that 20,000 want one thing and 20,000 want another. Until you have a vote, you don't know what 20,000.
But I'm asking hypothetically. Hypothetically.
I just told you. Hypothetically, yeah. You've got to take a vote to decide
right.
what those people want.
But
this is called leading the witness, isn't it?
Well, I don't think so. I don't
Ever
think
watch
so.
Perry Mason?
I'm trying to make a point, Bob, that a lot of times we call politics what we don't agree with, and we don't give another viewpoint the credibility that they have a viewpoint that may have credible points to it. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
The point I'm trying to make is that in certain matters, I'm sure you're right. But what we're talking about here is the welfare of 40,000 people. We're not talking about whether they want it red or blue. What we're saying is that you've got a situation that I believe should be put before the voters. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't sit around and wait. I mean, legally, I suppose we have to sit around and wait. I'll go help them get the signatures.
Right.
Because I think we ought to vote on it.
Okay. Well, let me ask one more question about the state senator that you said that you'd talk with. When we talked about that one senator that apparently had some misgivings about it, and he voted for it anyway. Would you say that just because he did, that all the rest of the senators and the representatives voted that way?
Tell me that again.
Just because one of the senators that you talk with...
No, I did not say that. I did not say that the state senator was against it. I said that the indication I got from the state senator was that the main reason that they voted for this, the main reason, was to bring it down.
Okay.
I have no idea. We didn't get off into a discussion of whether it was good or bad.
Okay. And forgive me for that, because I interpreted it as the state senator was against. Okay.
Not at all.
But the state senator wanted to push it down to that level rather than addressing it at the state level. Is that correct?
And that's right. I have a tendency to vote for people that believe that. And I think that the further step is to bring it down to the city level so that the city can vote on it. Not have somebody in Austin, Tarrant County, Washington, D.C. telling us what to do in Haltom City. I don't like the press telling us what to do. I don't like any of the way things have been happening lately, but I believe that the citizens have a right to vote on it.
I see.
And if you need some help getting up the petition after a while, well, let me know, because I will sign it.
Well, let me ask you this. So in your opinion, the people that voted for this, before to have this pass, this resolution that the city council could do this, that was not necessarily for their an endorsement for their city council to pass it. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
I said I voted
right.
Yes for that. I'm voting no for this at this moment.
Just to clarify, so that the people that voted for this,
you're having me presume what the other people are saying. I'm telling you what I did.
Well, okay, but I'm saying, do you think that those, and what I'm asking you is, do you think that those people would change their vote on this issue if they had to vote on it again? Because to them, it's a waste of money to go ahead and do this again, in their opinion.
How is it a waste of money? I'm not saying we've got a lot of there's some election dates open between now and October or whenever it is. There, as has been said, to do something tonight when you got plenty of time to do it and plenty of time to think about it and plenty of time to get it on a ballot that doesn't cost you any extra. You're just saying, Well, I don't care what all these people think.
Councilmember Sutton, if you would,
Okay.
bring it into to focus and let's move on.
Okay.
If you have another question too, that's
Sure.
fine.
I
but
just wanted to say that so
stay
the
on
people
track.
that voted for this, you'd want to give them a chance to vote again on this, is what you're saying.
You're not voting again on something. There was a vote taken on a statewide level allowing y'all to either do it or not do it, and then the citizens could petition for an election. That's what the law was, and all I'm saying is, and I'm not the only one. I know some other people that voted. I'm not going to sit here and name them, but and there's
Right.
not thousands, but I'm
Right.
saying I know people checked yes, as I did,
Yeah.
and are going to check no,
Okay.
probably on the next thing. And I think they have a right to vote. I'm not going to say I'm not going to get up here and tell these people how to vote. I'm going to tell
Right.
them how I'm going to vote.
Right, right. Well, I certainly agree with that, Bob, that we ought to have the right to voice our opinions. I'm just making the point that I think that people have voiced their opinions, and that's the only point. Thanks. No further questions.
Do I get to answer that? No further question. He keeps you keep saying something that I'm not saying.
If you would clarify what you are saying, Mr. Watkins.
I'm going to say it again. That is not what I'm saying. The people have not voted. How many people voted? How many people voted in the gubernatorial election? Anybody? Yeah, how many? No, not how many of y'all. I mean, how many people in Haltom City voted? We're talking about this percentage of. Yeah, well, there were several thousand because the wet dry thing balanced off of it.
Mr. Watkins, go ahead and make your point.
Well,
though.
the
We don't
point
know
is that ever how many it wasn't near the 20,000 that's registered in Haltom City. So we're not talking about people getting to change their vote or do something different or have an epiphany. What we're talking about is that some people didn't vote, some people did vote. I don't know whether they're going to change their vote or not, but this is not called changing your vote. You voted to allow the city to do X. Now you're saying the citizens have the right to vote on Y. This is not changing your vote.
A point has been made. We have two other lights. Councilmember Williams, Fowler, do you have anything that's real pressing? We've belabored this for an hour
No,
and
sir.
15
No,
minutes
sir.
time probably to move forward.
I got something very pressing.
Please proceed. And then
My
I'm going to call
stomach
for
against this thing for
a
one.
motion.
As you're walking back to sit down, I'll tell you what y'all were spent 20 minutes saying. It's been voted on to be able to allow us to decide whether or not to do that. Now there's election, and the people that's all involved in it can come out and vote whichever way we want to go if it goes that. Now I'm ready to make a motion.
I'm ready to receive a motion.
Let me think.
Can I sit down, or you? I mean, I'm aging as we stand.
Officer, could you take the prisoner?
I'm gonna remember that, boy.
Okay, Councilmember Williams, your motion.
I had all the intentions of the world of putting this on the agenda and following up like we did for the second reading. I am disappointed that the local newspaper did not put anything in there today, because I feel like if it had been in there, now I know one gentleman reads the website, so he knew it was on here, but I would like to have a bigger turnout on both sides to hear this. The attorney said that I think there's nothing before the Attorney General right now, and Tom and I just talked behind the chair a while ago, and we think there may just be one, and that's on the single group, whether or not it's legal to give one to a single group. So we're still at a point to where we have plenty of time to pass this if we don't pass it tonight. Is that right, Counselor?
You can pass it tonight or any time from here to eternity, the way the law is written now.
At what point can the petition start being made? Once we decide.
At any point. The law went into effect January 1st of this year, so at any point a petition could be circulated.
Okay. We've got another meeting February the 9th. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I would like to make a motion that we table this until the February 9th meeting. direct counsel to find out, yes, counselor, to find out if there's anything before the Attorney General.
Any requests for opinions involving this
Right.
statute? Okay.
Okay, we have a motion to table until February 9th. Councilmember Hurley?
I've got another thought I'd like to bring up because I know there's a motion on the floor and we need a second. But if council agrees, I would submit a substitute motion. In listening to both sides of this argument, I came to council tonight prepared to vote for the tax freeze for the seniors. And I think there's a lot of merit into what Mr. Eklund said and what Mr. Watkins have said. And we have been listening to a particular group of special interests, Mr. Garcia's silver-haired legislation, and they talk like the seniors are going to be kicked out of their house if they don't pay their taxes. They're going to have to go into nursing homes. Now listen, they've been lied to and misled, or deceived, I'll say, because it costs money to go in a nursing home. It's not cheap, and the only reason people go there is because they need assisted living. The facts are you can't be evicted from your house if it's a homestead, and you live there for 20 years till you die. So they don't have a valid point. Rather than this council making a decision that would show preference to a particular group, I would move that this council call for an election to be held in May to put this on a ballot to let all the citizens vote. Why not?
Okay, we've got, and you'll have the floor when I get through. We have a motion on the floor. We don't have a second. You're bringing up another thought, and that thought may or may not be legal. Can I ask our counsel to address what you just said before we proceed with the possibility of a substitute motion? And then we'll come right back to you.
All right.
The constitutional amendment provides for the council to approve the tax freeze. And then it says, as an alternative, on receipt of a petition signed by 5% of the registered voters of the city, the governing body shall call an election. There's no provision in the Constitution that provides for the council just calling an election on the matter itself. I'm not prepared tonight to tell you that that's something that you can do because the Constitution doesn't specifically provide for it.
Okay, thank you.
Back to you, Councilmember
Right,
Hurley.
I'll pass my idea on
withdraw
that.
that.
I thought that this would be better if the citizens could vote on it, and then you find out how the majority of the citizens feel.
The only way the citizens
Start
can
a
vote.
petition.
Yeah, this only way.
Well, Mr. Lewis said that he could do that, so we could leave it up to him.
The only way the citizens can vote at this point, Counselor, is if they bring a petition in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to table this until February 9th. Councilmember Fowler, you had your light on. I don't know if I turned it off.
No, I turned it off, Mr. Mayor. It's fine. No, I was going to add another substitute motion. Thank you, though. No, I would like to see us, just as you said, just like that question in itself, I'd like to ask council to bring that back. And then I would also like to ask you, I think you have a mayor's council meeting, I thought I saw on the schedule, when?
Monday night.
Monday night. If you don't mind, would you ask if the other cities have any of the information, such as South Lake and such as Bedford, one that's passed it and one that's denied it, that would give us a little better knowledge of the reasons that for their passing and for their denying it. I think that better informs us as council members, and I would like to see some of these answers be done. I don't think that anyone's jumping to conclusions, and I know that you have until I know it said, and it's infinite when you could pass it, but if as far as affecting our seniors for this current budget year for 2004, the taxes that they would pay next January, when is the deadline that this would be passed that would affect that?
When is the deadline for 2004 taxes?
Right.
I assume it would be prior to October 1st, 2004.
So this has from now until October 1st, till September 30th or September 30th, that it could be passed, looked at and passed, if it were decided to or denied, and then allow the citizens to put it on a ballot, petition for it to be put on a ballot.
That's correct.
But it could be passed up until the September the 30th of.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So am I hearing that as a 2nd?
I'll
to the
second
motion?
that. I was just going to make clarification on the dates that there was
Okay.
still plenty of time to look
And
at
I
it.
will get that information. We have a motion
you.
and a second on the floor to,
Mayor, point of order. The motion between John Williams and Trey Fowler was a little bit different. Can we make sure that those are the same motion? I want to make sure it's the same motion. Which is it, Trey's or John's?
For clarification, I was just seconding Councilmember Williams, but all I was asking was that if you would bring information as much as you could from the mayor's council, and then ask our counselor to find out about the election part of it that Councilmember Hurley had asked. That was just from a directive standpoint.
so what you're saying is your second is a.
Yes, sir.
a
I was
direct
just
second.
asking for y'all to bring that information so we would be better informed.
Okay, we have a motion, a second on the floor. Any further discussion? There being none, if you'll register your vote, I'll post it at this time. The motion is to postpone. The motion carries. This will come back before this council February 9th. Did you get your tally? Okay, let's move to item number 13, the monthly financial. And I think the council has this in our packet, and if you can cut to the chase,
I'll
we
try
would
to
all
be brief.
appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I just want to touch on a few points of the monthly financial report for the period ending December 30th, which represents 25% of the budgeted year. The year-to-date total revenues in the general fund were 26% of the total budgeted revenues. The expenditures were 30% of the adopted budget in the general fund. In the water and sewer fund, the total expenditures were, the total revenues in the water and sewer fund were 22% of the budgeted revenues, and the expenditures were 18% of the budgeted expenditures. Within the CCPD fund, the year-to-date revenues were 29% of the total budget, and the expenditures were 19% of the total budgeted expenditures. In the Economic Development Corporation, the year-to-date revenues were 7% of the total budgeted revenues, and it was only 7% due to a $3.5 million bond issue that was budgeted in fiscal year 04. However, it was issued and received in fiscal year 03. Excluding that $3.5 million budgeted revenue, they were actually 16% of the total budgeted revenues. There was nothing significant to really report on the other funds of the city. They seem to be on track. The total consolidated summary of all funds monthly sales tax collections were $444,775, which is a decrease from last year and the year before. Probably mainly because of the loss of Kmart. Last year we had Kmart at this time. And the total investments for the city decreased to just a little under 18 million. And the average rate of return on the non-arbitrage portfolio was 1.17%.
Mr. Wortrell, I want to clarify something I said a moment. I don't want to minimize the value of the report you brought. You put a lot of work into it. You did provide that in the council packet. We've had an opportunity to look it over, and I've looked that over a line item at a time. And I want you to understand I wasn't trying to diminish the value or the importance of it, because what drives a city and the operation of a city is the budget and budget constraints. And it's very important for us to have good information and for the citizens to have accurate information regarding that. Once we take action on this to accept the financial report in a moment, will this report in its current form be available to citizens if they wish to have a copy? So any citizen watching or on TV or here in the audience who'd like to have a copy of this report, the more detailed, it is available through the city secretary's office with an open records request, I suppose.
And I believe they put it on the website, don't they?
Okay,
yes,
it is on the website. Great. Council Member Fowler, I believe your light was on first.
I'm going to try to go quick, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Worrell, for, I know, as we'd mentioned earlier, y'all are shorthanded over in the finance department. I know you've taken a lot of the lead over there, and I want to thank you for doing what you can do right now, and hopefully we can get you some help over there as soon as we can.
Thank you.
On the revenue side, sales tax, you said year to date, 25% of the year complete. We've had revenues of about 27% of our budget and expenditures of 30%, so that means we're at a negative loss of 3% behind schedule.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, forecast-wise, do you see that, going through I know, so the viewing audience will understand, these forecasts come from months prior.
Yes, that is correct.
Does this forecast include part of the Christmas season when people are supposedly spending money?
No.
Part of the holiday season?
No, it does not.
So we look for it to catch up a little bit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to make sure first so everybody knows. So we're 3% behind right now, but we should catch up in the next couple of months when the sales tax comes in, which lags behind.
Definitely. Yes.
Okay. We look good in the water and sewer then. Revenues were 22%, expenditures 18%.
Yes, and the reason why it's only 22% is because more people use more water in the summer.
Right, but
So
at least
you'll
we're
see-
ahead. We're 4% ahead of.
Yeah, we're actually
ahead of budget right now.
Yeah.
So overall, do you see our forecast just from you looking at the numbers? Do you see our forecast looking to hit forecast this year, or do we look to maybe be a little behind or a little ahead? Or I know it's tough to say right now with only 25%, but
Yeah.
from prior years,
I feel that for sales tax, for example, I think the estimates that were approved by the council in the budget were conservative. So I do believe that we will at least hit that mark. I feel that we will actually go above. We'll actually receive more than what we budgeted for sales tax, and we did last year as well. We received like well, it's actually on page 9.
Well, correct, but we revised our budget last year, though.
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you don't
that's
remember,
true.
we had a significant revision in the budget. So.
Yes, and it was a very conservative estimate, as you can see, because we received $229,000 more than what was budgeted.
Right. So that's why I say I want to get out of those numbers from last year and see where we're at this year. And if these are good numbers, then I feel a little more confident in where we're at financially.
Yes, and also on page 9, it shows a year-end estimate of $3,379,161, and as you can see, that's $129,000 more than what we budgeted. I feel that that's a good estimate.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Based on the information we have, which isn't much at this point.
Tell everyone in finance thank you for their hard work.
Sure will. Thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
First of all, I was going to say, Trey, I know y'all been working with the temp services in your department there, and I know you've been short-handed, and I want to thank you for the work you've done. And just for the record, did you start out in the finance department?
No, I didn't.
Where did you start out?
I actually started in Public Works.
Public Works.
Street Department.
Excellent reason why we should increase within. Good go.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councilman Williams? Okay. Any further questions by the council? Okay. We do need a motion to accept the financial report, please. Council Member Fowler, I believe your light was on first.
I move for approval of the proposed financial report.
Councilmember Sutton.
That's for a second, Mayor.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none, if you'll register your vote, and it passes by unanimous vote of the quorum present. Item number 14, Capital Improvement Status Report, Mr. Muir. And I did ask Mr. Worrell to cut to the chase. If you can do that too, without diminishing the value of what you have to bring before us, because the capital improvements is also a very important part of what's going on in Haltom.
It is important, but probably not nearly as important as the financial report. But I'll try and cut to the chase. We'll start off with Broadway. This will be the last time you hear me talk about Broadway. It is complete, finalized out. There are some issues that the contractor is still working out with TxDOT, but they have cleared the site. However, on the Lindsay, Revere, and Roxy project, those 3 streets, some of you know that I gave you guys notice a couple of weeks ago that we had to cut up Roxy again on the south side. of the street, take out the entire south side of the street due to a surveying problem from the contractor. So they're having to regrade it and re-pour it, and hopefully we'll have that done by I don't know, early March, late February, early March. But those drainage issues, I think it's to those residents' benefit that we go ahead and take care of that now instead of waiting for what may happen with the heavy rain to come later. As far as the Mona project, construction did start on that last week. Hopefully be finished by August of this year. Joy Lee is, as Bennett had referenced earlier, is finished, and Gage, we just recently, city staff recently started that. Tarrant County is hoping to award a contract for that probably sometime next month, and probably start March, April or so on the road work for that, and it'll take about 5 months to finish that out. On the administrative order, we did finish everything in those administrative order projects. Sanitary sewer replacement on Big Fossil Creek drainage basin, that was finished by Circle C. They're just doing some punch list items, as is the manhole rehab. They're testing some manholes, which will take a few weeks, but they are essentially finishing out punch list items. And again, as is Horseshoe Construction, they're finishing out their punch list. On the building construction, phase 2 of the Municipal Service Center started about a month or so ago. We demoed the existing public works facility. They are laying the foundation for the new fleet services center. But all the underground utilities for that facility are in place. For the rec center, that is kicking into gear a little bit more so now with the receiving of some roofing material and stuff. The metal stud framing and exterior drywall sheeting are complete. The site walkway paving has been placed on hold for review by the civil engineer to the Broadway Avenue project being placed at different elevations. So that's some areas that we're working out with now. The built-up roofing has been installed over the middle roof, and the hard ceiling framing has been started on the interior lobby. We're still tracking for a March completion date. On the central fire station, we're tracking for a move-in date of about a month from now. We got a long weekend on the February 14th, 15th, 16th, and they should be moving in sometime during that time. But for right now, the drywall is complete throughout the building. The roof trim and the gutters and the downspouts are completed. Electrical service panels are built. The interior painting is about 80% complete. Acoustical panel grids being installed now, so we're tracking very well on that project. And finally, as we talked about earlier tonight, the council awarded a contract to F&S Partners to start the design of the new library. And to finish up the beautification project on Belknap, there are still a few more plantings and some additional sod to be needed, but it should be finished by the end of the month.
Questions or comments for Mr. Muir, Councilmember Fowler?
Quick question, Mr. Muir. The Central Fire Station, I had some people ask me, what is the plan for the fire station that's there currently, the facility that's there?
It will be demoed.
Is there, and understand I have to answer these questions as a citizen, why are we going to demo a perfectly good building that could be used maybe for storage, or, I've had different things that people have asked me or said, why don't you use it for this and that, and I kind of have a little bit of a problem with demoing a building myself that give me a reason why it needs to be demoed, is I guess what I'm asking.
Well, and I probably should know the reason, Councilman Fowler, and frankly, I don't off the top of my head. This was in the plan for quite a while to demo that building. I'm not aware that the structural integrity of it has been compromised or anything. I know it does have quite a bit of asbestos in it. I think just the functionality and having it there, and what all that they're trying to do with the new central station, that facility is going to be in the way and impede them for what they're trying to do. as far as, I just don't have an answer for that right
Would
now.
you-
And Chief McIntyre's probably got a ready-made answer for it, and,
Well,
and I
he-
should know it. I
He's
just
fighting
don't.
fires tonight, so if you
But I can
would,
get
though,
back
I
to
would
you on that.
I would like to ask that maybe
Certainly.
if it's Chief McIntyre that might have the best answer for it, so that I can answer some of the constituents that,
Yeah,
that I
I'll
have that have asked
respond to
me. And I'd like to see us maybe, if not, bring it before the council and see if it's something that we might have a utilization for it. If there's not really a good solid reason that it needs to be torn down, then
Well, I can bring it back, but I mean, it was in the plans and design to be demoed. The contractor's going to tear it down. It's essentially already been approved by the council to do that. We can look at it again.
right, and that's what I guess I'm asking for us to
Okay.
do.
That's fine.
If we
I
need
just
to
didn't want
place
you
it on
thinking
the
that
agenda item, I'd
that
like
you guys, I didn't want you thinking that you haven't had that opportunity.
No, we
You
have, and I understand, but I just really didn't think about it and put much thought into it until, some of the citizens, once y'all demolished the house on the corner, and then the next house is going to be demolished, and they said, what are you going to do with all that space, and, what are you going to do with that building? There's nothing wrong with that building, and so, I don't know I didn't have a good answer for them, so I guess what I'm saying is I'd either like to give them a good answer. If not, I'd like to look at the reason why we're doing it. If it doesn't need to be done, I'd like to maybe see if we can use it for storage.
I think it's mainly with the drive-in, the pull-in access. I mean, getting their equipment in and out of that thing. They need the ingress and egress off of Meadow Oaks.
Okay.
And coming in off of where the current fire station is accommodates that more so than coming in just south of where those two properties are that we bought with the houses.
Okay. If you don't mind, just ask and bring it.
And parking, is that what you said? And parking also.
So you will bring back in response to Councilmember
I'll respond
Fowler.
to Councilman Fowler.
Okay.
Certainly.
Councilmember Fowler.
Thank you. That's fine.
Councilmember Williams, and before I turn that over to you, Mayor Pro Tem, will you assume control of the meeting? I'm about to start coughing, and I'm out of water. So if you will assume control of the meeting.
We can sneak some stuff through while he's gone. The chief had told me that would impede the egress
Yes.
of that. Plus also visual. It would give them.
It would certainly make the entire complex look a lot better if the current
Aesthetically
structure is not
pleasing,
there.
I think is the word you use.
Yes, that is the word.
It's not
I
in my
use.
vocabulary, but I got it out.
It
But
would make it better.
like Mr. Fowler said, he's concerned about that building there. I'm more concerned about the two pieces of property on the corner that are going to be vacant. With the financial situation that the city's in, possibly find something that would blend with the fire station there. Maybe not even a city facility. Maybe a commercial facility, insurance office, or something like that. That would net some of the money back from that. The reason for buying that was to get those two houses out of there because it wouldn't fit in with the fire station was there. But I think if you could get someone to build an office building or something matching the fire station or somewhat match it, I think it would be.
Well, that's a consideration. It's my understanding that those properties were built to have that property basically vacant. I'm not aware that.
Are you aware of what we get for it?
I've got a little bit of an idea.
I'm not going to tell you, but it's an awful big vacant lot.
I understand. I'm not aware of any plan, but I mean, it's certainly a consideration that we can look at.
I probably won't be
have
here
not
that
looked
far
at it.
down the line when they do that, but it's something that
That's fine.
they should
But
look into. It's awful. It's an awful expensive piece of property to have for a vacant lot, or better said, as a park. But
I can appreciate that, but at the same time, I don't want to, for aesthetically pleasing purposes, I don't want to do anything that takes away from.
I'm not saying a car lot.
Firefighter.
I'm saying like an office. Thanks for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Muir. Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Councilmember Hurley, for stepping in and rescuing us. Ready for the economic development status report?
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. The status report is a monthly status report, but it also is quarterly for the fourth quarter of last year. During the last quarter, Economic Development Corporation produced our first newsletter, Crossroads. This was done and mailed to households and businesses just after the first of the year in order to help us communicate some of the good things that are happening in Haltom City. And there are lots of good things happening along the many commercial corridors that crisscross the city, hence the name Crossroads. We've gotten several positive comments back since the mailing of this, and it's also increased our dialogue with businesses here in town, which was part of its purpose. So we look forward to publishing more of those in the future. Development activity and business starts continues to be on the increase. During the quarter, we had 61 certificates of occupancy issued for businesses. 8 new single-family dwellings were built, and $1.7 million in commercial new construction took place during the quarter. Interesting side note, 2 of the single-family dwellings that were built actually on lots that the